Chapter 1824. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Lin Fang and the others all shouted loudly. With the help of the staff weapon, Ling Han and his group were too frightening, and could not be matched at all. This was the so-called two fists were no match for four hands. They only had one staff weapon, and the disadvantage in terms of numbers was too great. Furthermore, Ling Han and those dwarves all had powerful immunity to the death ray. So how were they supposed to fight? In the end, only 3 managed to retreat successfully, and they were Lin Fang, Tung Sun and Wei Nian. The others were all killed by the death ray, and turned into mush. We won! The dwarves all cheered loudly with their arms raised. Drink! Set up a banquet! Celebrate! These dwarves did not have any sense of danger at all, and were not the slightest bit worried that Lin Fang and her group would make a comeback. Nor did they realize that the gap in cultivation level between the two sides was as wide as heaven and earth. If it were not for the help of Ling Han and his group, they would definitely have been instantly annihilated, even if they had the staff weapon. Ling Han and his group also received the warm hospitality of the dwarves. Bewitching Maiden Ro was slightly displeased. She was moved by Ling Han's act of sacrificing himself to protect them, but he was completely fine, which made her feel like she had been deceived. You didn't move for so long. Are you deliberately deceiving me into sympathy and tears? But it could not be denied that her life had indeed been saved by Ling Han, and she definitely had to accept this favor. Want to return the favor? The Empress hooked a finger under Bewitching Maiden Ro's small chin. Serve my husband in bed tonight. Bewitching Maiden Ro was greatly embarrassed. Aren't you too unreserved? But in the words of others, it was a perverted statement, but when it came from the Empress's mouth, it was like a golden rule, filled with dignity, and made others want to obey. This was the charm of the Empress. Ling Han shook his head and grimaced. Why did the Empress always think of the 9 revolutions charm physique? Could it be that he could not ascend to the peak without the help of the 9 revolutions charm physique? However, something that the Empress had set her mind on was clearly not something that he could stop. Thus, Ling Han could not be bothered to persuade her, and merely started to ask the dwarves. These dwarves were naturally not wary of others, and because they had fought side by side with Ling Han, they were full of trust in him. Whatever he asked, they would tell him everything they knew. The staff weapons in their hands were called sacred weapons by them, and they were taken from a mountain cave. What made Ling Han extremely astonished was that these dwarves actually didn't come here through the normal way, but rather from that mountain cave. Every 100 years, they would enter the cave, take out a few newly born dwarves, and then bury the old and dead people in the cave. Ling Han had a guess. In fact, these dwarves were formed from the source power of earth. The heavenly law jade was the origin of heaven and earth. It was an extremely high-level existence, and the earth was originally the mother of life. What was so strange about giving birth to these earth spirits? Aside from the fact that they were all born from the cave, the other evidence was that they were completely fine after being hit by the staff weapon's death ray, because they were one in the first place, and all originated from some kind of power from the heavenly law jade. Ling Han's request to go to the cave was met with opposition from a portion of the Garuru tribe, but there were also some dwarves who expressed their agreement. Ling Han had given them great help, so how could they refuse the request of their benefactor? Finally, these dwarves said that they had to discuss, ask the elders of their tribe to make a divination, ask the spirits of their ancestors, and so on, and then they could give Ling Han an answer. Ling Han did not urge them. Though the cultivation level of these dwarves was not high, they grasped various techniques, and could not be underestimated. Perhaps there was a great killing weapon in that cave? He stayed with the Empress and the others, and waited for the result of the dwarves' discussion. Ling Han and the Empress both entered into the Black Tower. They had both reached the peak stage of the second severance, and as long as they pushed open the barrier of their cultivation level, they would be able to deliver the third strike, and their battle prowess would naturally soar innumerable times. As long as they advanced into the third severance, then in this mystery realm, they would no longer have to fear anyone. Under normal circumstances, this was an impossible thing. At least, it would require the accumulation of several tens of thousands of years. If one's comprehension ability was inferior, then one might not be able to break through even after 1 billion, 10 billion, or 100 billion years. But Ling Han had the reincarnation tree, and more importantly, after the reincarnation tree had been reborn from the ashes, its effects had also increased by a considerable number of times. Coincidentally, Ling Han had also just harvested a few fruits. The reincarnation tree very rarely bore fruit, but as the source of all trees, the fruits it bore were definitely on the level of celestial medicine. Even if this present reincarnation tree was still something that had been sprouted, and the effects of the fruits were not as expected, it was still a celestial treasure. Ling Han and the Empress ate 4 celestial fruits, and then comprehended Tao under the reincarnation tree. They hoped that they could complete their breakthrough in the shortest time possible. 7 days later, Ling Han and the Empress came out of seclusion. Though neither of them had broken through, they both had great confidence. As long as they went into seclusion again, they were 90% sure that they could deliver the third strike. Too bad. The celestial medicine had already been used up. They couldn't possibly eat the 7 lives divine clouds, right? That mutated celestial medicine. Ling Han thought of that celestial medicine that had taken the form of a wolf's head and a rabbit's body. If they could refine it, then both he and the Empress should be able to advance into the third severance. The discussion of the Gururu tribe had also come to a conclusion. They agreed to let Ling Han and his group enter the mountain cave, but there was a precondition. They had to obtain a mountain treasure as an offering. In this mountain, there were rocks that had gained sentience and become spirits, and were called mountain treasures. In the Gururu tribe, mountain treasures were the best offering. Furthermore, aside from a specific time every 100 years, even dwarves were unable to enter the mountain cave at normal times. They could only do so by using mountain treasures as an offering. Thus, they did not deliberately make things difficult for Ling Han and his group at all. Ling Han and his group definitely could not wait as long as 100 years. After another 9 years or so, the suppressive effects of the volcano would disappear, and this place would once again become a land of violence, and only beings that were born and bred here would be able to survive. Thus, Ling Han and the Empress immediately set out, and bewitching Maiden Ro also chose to go with them. What was the point of staying in the village? Let me make this clear first. Saving you is one thing, and traveling together is another. Don't even think that we'll split the treasures with you, Ling Han said seriously. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but grind her teeth in anger. This treasure had not even appeared, and you had already drawn a clear line between us. Stinky man, why did he save me in the first place? She was extremely dissatisfied. With her charm, any man should circle around her and do whatever she said. Even if she made an excessive request, as long as she smiled and asked softly, there should be no reason for her to refuse. How did I meet such a guy? Bewitching Maiden Ro faced the Empress, and had no choice but to admit that any man that possessed such an exquisite fairy would indeed develop an immunity towards other women. Even a great bewitching maiden like her was no exception, but she was still unconvinced. There was no man that the purity sect could not conquer. If she did not turn this man into a subject under her skirt, she was afraid that a demon would be left behind in her heart, and she would never be able to break through to the dividing soul tier in this lifetime. Stinking man, then come and fight. I don't believe that I can't take you in. Chapter 1825. Ling Han and the others started a search in the mountains. As for the dwarf race, Ling Han had already reminded them to be careful. With the help of the staff weapon, they should not encounter any trouble. The 3 of them had heard the Gururu tribe describe that the mountain treasure was buried underground, some even several dozen meters deep. Aside from hunting, the daily life of these dwarves was to excavate the mountain treasure, but their gains were very, very few. Furthermore, these dwarves were too simple. Whenever they dug up a mountain treasure, they would anxiously offer it up, and had no concept of savings at all. Generally speaking, the mountain treasure was very easy to identify. It glowed on its own, and was milky white in color, and there seemed to be a transparent liquid inside. There was once an extremely daring Gururu tribe member who opened the mountain treasure and drank this liquid, and directly died a violent death. From then on, no guru dared to joke about the mountain treasure, thinking that this was a punishment from the gods. With the abilities of Ling Han and the others, they could easily topple mountains and overturn seas. But this mountain was different. It was too sturdy. Ling Han tried to blast open the mountain rocks, but there was no good effect at all. He could only slowly dig like an ordinary person. This efficiency was shockingly low, and could be said to be completely due to luck. This couldn't be helped. The three of them all tried their best to search for the mountain treasure, and bewitching Maiden Ro even said in anger that if the mountain treasure was discovered by her, she definitely would not bring Ling Han into the mountain cave. Ling Han only chuckled. "Small tower, can you guess what that mountain treasure is?" Ling Han asked. Since there was something that could help cheat, why not use it? Small tower pondered, and said, "That could be a cave spirit precious jade, formed from the accumulation of a sliver of the essence of the heavenly Tao source rock. So it could open the cave where the heavenly Tao jade is." "Are you sure that the heavenly Tao jade is hidden in that cave?" 99%. Small tower nodded. Since the heavenly Tao jade is formed, only celestial king tier methods can resist it. What you have to pay attention to are those two brats and little girl from celestial king tier forces. It is impossible for others to take it away. Can you find the mountain treasure? Ling Han asked again. If the distance is close, I can sense it, Small Tower said. How close? Within 10 feet. This distance was too small. But compared to turning over the entire mountain, the advantage of digging 10 feet down was greater than the heavens. Ling Han nodded, spread out his figure, and began to circle around in the mountains. If the mountain treasure was less than 3 meters underground, then Lil Tower would be able to sense it. Compared to digging, it was many times easier to go around and dig. Unfortunately, after circling around, Small Pagoda showed no reaction. Ling Han had no choice but to become a miner and cultivate the land in the mountains. This place was almost entirely made up of rocks, and the amount of soil was pitifully small. Furthermore, the rocks were extraordinarily hard, so they had to be refined with the power of rules. One could imagine how slow one's progress was. Fortunately, Ling Han and the other two had borrowed staff weapons, which could save them a lot of effort. Even so, they were still ridiculously slow. This went on for more than 5 months. The 3 young king tiers all put down their arrogance and diligently did the menial work. Brat, turn left, Small Tower suddenly said. Ling Han was stunned at first, and then revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. I found something. Small Tower was impatient and said, I told you to turn left, so turn left. What's with all this nonsense? Would it kill you not to beat Sundara? Ling Han continued to cultivate the land on the left, but he had just started when Small Tower said, You've gone too far, turn right a bit. After repeating this a few times, Small Tower finally stopped making any noise and allowed Ling Han to move forward. Now slow down. After advancing about half a meter, Small Tower spoke again. Ling Han slowed down his movements. Because the staff weapon might damage the cave spirit precious jade, he might as well not use the staff weapon, and just use his hands to dig at the rocks. His hands were entwined with rules, and they were like iron shovels. Though they were not as indestructible as the staff weapon, he could control them freely. If a piece of jade suddenly popped out of the rock, it would not be damaged. After a while, Ling Han's eyes lit up as he discovered a piece of beautiful jade. Indeed, as the dwarves had said, this rock was milky white and slightly transparent, and he could faintly feel liquid flowing inside as if it had a life of its own. As expected, it is the cave spirit precious jade, Small Tower said. Is this a treasure? Ling Han asked. Of course, it was formed by absorbing a shred of source power of Earth, and even ascending origin tiers would be tempted. Realization dawned on Ling Han. That dwarf had ingested the marrow fluid within and died, not because the precious fluid was poisonous, but because the medicinal effect was too strong, directly causing him to explode. Those dwarves were only in the shattering void tier, and though they had an inexplicable relationship with the heavenly Tao jade, they could not completely ignore the suppression of cultivation level. After all, this was directly drunk into the body, and could not be mentioned in the same breath as the light of death hitting the body. Unfortunately, This thing had to be used to open the cave, or else he could keep it for himself. As the saying went, one could not catch a wolf without sacrificing a child. Using this to exchange for the heavenly Tao jade. And then the fifth severance, its significance surpassed everything. Ling Han carefully dug out the cave's spirit precious jade, and felt it warm in his hand, with a slightly wriggling feeling. Put down the mountain treasure. An icy voice rang out. Though it was very pleasant to the ears, it was filled with killing intent. A person stood behind Ling Han, and even with the sensitivity of Ling Han's divine sense, he actually did not discover how she had come over. Her strength was strong, and her methods were truly astonishing. Zai Bingyan, the heir of a celestial king tier clan. No wonder she had such methods. Ling Han slowly turned around and faced Zai Bingyan directly. She held a staff in her hand, and the tip of the staff was pointed at him. It was precisely the weapon of the Garuru tribe. She obviously knew how to use this powerful weapon, and there was a hint of a cold smile at the corner of her lips, as if she was mocking him. With such a powerful weapon threatening, Ling Han would definitely have no choice but to submit. Why did she not make a move? That was because she was worried that she would destroy the mountain treasure as well. So she would wait for Ling Han to hand over the mountain treasure before making a move to kill him. Ling Han frowned slightly, and then killing intent surged. You killed people, he said. I sensed a strong scent of blood, and there was more than one. He suddenly became furious. You slaughtered that village of dwarves. This deranged woman. Zai Bingyan's expression was filled with disdain. What was the big deal about slaughtering a village of dwarves? He was only a native of the Shattering Void tier, and was not even qualified to be remembered by her. She raised her long, shapely brows and said, Don't be so long-winded, and quickly hand over the mountain treasure. This man was too despicable, actually daring to make her expose her bottom in public. Not only did he have to die, all the others who had seen her naked body had to die as well. Ling Han clenched his fist and coldly said, Give me your life in exchange. Die. Zai Bingyan shifted the staff weapon slightly, and xiao, a beam of light shot out, shooting towards Ling Han's right leg. This was a warning. Chapter 1826. The speed of the death ray was too fast. Putting aside the severing mundane tier, probably even a dividing soul tier might not be able to dodge it. Thus, this beam of light naturally struck Ling Han's leg without any deviation. Ling Han stood proudly like a boulder. This Zai Bingyan's face was instantly filled with shock, her small mouth involuntarily gaping. This was something she could not understand, believe, or accept. How was this possible? Ling Han humphed and charged over. Deranged woman, I will use your head to apologize to the Garuru tribe. You overestimate yourself. Zai Bingyan said disdainfully. She had already recovered from her previous shock. After all, she was a king among kings, and actually dared to ask her to die with him? She was the heir of a celestial king tier clan, the future empress of heaven. How noble. So what if you can block the staff weapon? Can your battle prowess match mine? Zai Bingyan battled fiercely with Ling Han. She was filled with confidence in herself, and the reason why she used the staff weapon to threaten him was only to save some strength. After all, Ling Han's physique was too strong, and she was deeply touched. Which celestial king tier force are you the heir of? She asked. Otherwise, without the brand that a celestial king had imprinted in his body, how could he possibly resist the regulations of great Tao formed by the source power of earth? This was the terrifying aspect of the staff weapon. It was equivalent to a celestial king casting a technique, and without the same level of regulations, there was no way to resist it at all. Humph, if it's not a celestial king tier force you can slaughter wantonly? Ling Han also used the staff weapon. Amidst the death ray, Zai Bingyan similarly could not dodge, and was blasted head-on. However, Zai Bingyan acted as if nothing had happened. As she attacked wildly, she said disdainfully, You think that you are the only one who has been bestowed supreme regulations by a celestial king tier force? Realization dawned on Ling Han. No wonder she guessed that he was the heir of a celestial king tier force. Since the staff weapon was useless, Ling Han simply put it away. He raised his fists, channeling the nine heavens flame and shining source water, and began to clash with Zai Bingyan. However, staff weapons could allow a group of Shattering Void tier natives to insta-kill 3rd Severance King tiers, but obviously could not be used on Luo Changfeng, Zai Bingyan, and the others. Going by this logic, it was actually the source power of heaven and earth that was slightly more awesome. Thinking about it, how many source energies were there? And how many celestial kings were there? Or in other words, if a celestial king wanted someone else to possess this kind of destructive power, he himself would also have to pay an extremely high price. This was for the sake of allowing a junior to possess the strength to insta-kill Severing Mundane tier and Dividing Soul tier. Yet a celestial king had to make such a sacrifice. Which celestial king would be so foolish? Ling Han and Zai Bingyan exchanged blows. In terms of battle prowess, he was clearly at a disadvantage, but with the might of 2 great source powers, he was not too much inferior. Zai Bingyan smirked coldly. Even if there was a supreme regulation bestowed by a celestial king, could it be used limitlessly? Up until now, you have only used this kind of Dao law to protect yourself. You have not used it to attack, because it will be used up. It wasn't that she didn't hate Ling Han, but rather that she wanted to use this precious Dao law when she was seizing the heavenly Dao Jade. Otherwise, without the protection of Celestial King Dao law, she would not be able to seize this kind of treasure at all. Now that Ling Han was squandering like this, once the power of regulation was completely used up, what right did he have to resist her? And what right did he have to seize the heavenly Dao Jade? Idiot, which Celestial King Tier Force had raised him. But thinking about it again, this brat seemed to be very sinister. He was clearly the heir of a Celestial King Tier Force, and actually ran off to become a follower of a 3-star force. She had almost been deceived. Despicable villain, Zai Bingyan rebuked. How was this guy worthy of being the heir of a Celestial King tier? He actually dared to hide his head and show his tail. Ling Han did not argue. What was there to say to a dead person? Since he had already developed killing intent, then whether you were a man or a woman, no matter how beautiful you were, it was impossible that you could arouse the slightest bit of pity in him. Kill. The two of them battled fiercely, and Zai Bingyan became more and more shocked the more she fought. Logically speaking, with the rate at which Ling Han was expending, the Celestial King tier regulations should have already been completely used up. How could he still continue to circulate, as if there was no end to it? This was an impossible thing. It should be known that though the power of Celestial King tier was endless, they were severing mundane tiers, after all, and there was a limit to the regulations that they could bear. If too many regulations of Great Tao were sealed in, it would be a huge burden on them, and they might even explode and die. She was estimating based on her own situation. The regulations that Ling Han had expended had definitely reached the amount that had been sealed in her body. So why was he still able to circulate them? Could it be that his physique was strong, and there were also many regulations that had been sealed in him? Was that possible? That was Celestial King tier regulations. So what was the use of having a stronger physique? In front of Celestial King tier regulations, was there any difference between 1 point and 100 points? They would all be crushed. This battle continued, and Zai Bingyan's shock became greater and greater. That was because Ling Han was still wantonly using Celestial King tier regulations, just like a super prodigal. She could not understand, and could only feel shock. What was even more unacceptable to her was that her Celestial King tier regulations were greatly expended, and she had already used up half of them. If they continued to fight, she might not even have enough to collect the heavenly Dao Jade. Just you wait. She threw down these words and turned to leave. She could not waste any more Celestial King tier regulations here. Ling Han did not chase after her. It was useless even if he caught up now. Similarly, he could not do anything to Zai Bingyan. He had to break through to the 3rd Severance. Ling Han thought. At first he had this thought, and now that he thought that the dwarf village might have been slaughtered by Zai Bingyan, his killing intent was even more boundless. He, the Empress, and bewitching Maiden Ro rushed back to the dwarf village, but saw that this place was already littered with corpses, and not a single survivor could be found. This deranged woman. Ling Han's eyes swept over, his whole body trembling slightly. Though he had not interacted with the dwarves for a long time, He was very appreciative of their passion and simplicity. He had definitely not thought that he would actually run into such a scene one day. Zai Bingyan, if I do not kill you, I cannot rest easy. Ling Han looked up at the skies and practically enunciated each word clearly. Xiao, just at this moment, the ground suddenly split open, and a rabbit suddenly scuttled out. It had the head of a wolf, and opened its mouth wide like a bottomless pit. It was as large as 7 or 8 meters in size, and bit towards Ling Han. It was that mutated celestial medicine. This guy really came and went like a shadow, and was skilled in stealth, deceiving even the divine sense of Ling Han and the others. Furthermore, it was quite intelligent. The point of attack just happened to be when Ling Han was incredibly furious, and a powerful ripple appeared in his mind. Then the attack came. Though Ling Han was shocked, he showed a sliver of a smile instead. He was only afraid that this celestial medicine would never appear again. Then, he would not be able to collect it, but once it appeared, he would at least have hope. This celestial medicine had even eaten a corner of the 7 Lives Divine Cloud's buttocks. No matter what, he had to get his revenge. Pa! The celestial medicine was swallowed in one gulp, and Ling Han suddenly disappeared. The rabbit's head immediately returned to its original size, and the wolf's head was dripping with saliva. It was going to refine Ling Han, and then refine the 7 Lives Divine Cloud. Chapter 1828. Killing Zai Bingyan became Ling Han's inner demon, his obsession. He exited the Black Tower and released the suppression on his cultivation level. Instantly, thunderclouds rolled over in the skies. This was a celestial king-level mystery realm, but it still couldn't hide from the mysteries of heaven. It was clear how high the heavenly Tao was, and it was above celestial kings. Was there any existence that could escape the Tao of heaven and earth? Not within the 5 elements, and truly stand high above, able to look down on everything? Ling Han suddenly thought. Stop thinking like that, it's too dangerous, Small Tower suddenly warned. Ling Han only humphed and didn't ask. The heavenly Tao is merciless, and will erase any existence that wants to escape its control. Though the heavenly Tao can only operate above a certain rule, and can't send down a heavenly punishment that far surpasses your cultivation level to erase you, it can make you extremely unfortunate. From now on, not only will you have no chance with treasures, you will also suffer from bad luck, Small Tower explained. It calmly said. To say nothing else, it only needs to let you encounter a celestial king, and let this celestial king know that you have 2 source powers of heaven and earth, and I believe most celestial kings will attack you. Can you escape? Ling Han was silent. He wasn't afraid of the heavenly tribulation. It couldn't greatly surpass his cultivation level, but if it arranged for him to run into a celestial king now, then even the Black Tower couldn't protect him. As the saying went, there was heaven's will in the unseen world. At least now, he wasn't qualified to challenge the mysterious heavenly Tao. It was better to obediently endure the tribulation. Fighting against the heavens required powerful strength, and no matter what, he had to be a celestial king to be able to resist the demonic moth created by the heavenly Tao. Kwang! The heavenly tribulation took shape, and instantly struck down a long bolt of lightning, spreading the might of regulations to suppress and kill the ant that dared to extract the power of heaven and earth. Ling Han dealt with it calmly. After entering the celestial realm, the heavenly tribulation was actually much gentler to him. In terms of absolute might, that 3rd severance heavenly tribulation was definitely countless times stronger than the tribulation of the Genesis tier. But more importantly, Ling Han's strength was also rising, and with this comparison, he was actually becoming more and more relaxed. Because in the celestial realm, there wasn't just one freak like him, and the heavenly Tao wouldn't be so concerned about him. Of course, such a heavenly tribulation was something that even kings would fear, but it was nothing much for kings among kings. In fact, Ling Han even took the initiative to shatter his own body, to be tempered by the power of the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han's eyes shone brightly, transforming into 2 heavenly pillars that shot into the sky. It seemed like even the secret realm was unable to block them. Using his hand as a blade, he slashed it into the sky, cleaving heaven and earth. This slash clearly hadn't struck anything, but a deafening explosion erupted in the heavens and the earth. This was the sound of the great Tao. In an instant, the lightning blazed and the power of the heavenly tribulation surged. Ling Han slashed at the world with his saber, causing the connection between him and the world to become even weaker. This naturally caused the world to be dissatisfied. This was only the third slash. The fourth slash would definitely incite an even more intense backlash from heaven and earth. If he couldn't resist it, he would die. Ling Han nodded internally. No wonder there were so few emperor tears. Sometimes, even if you were freakishly talented and had reached the standard in terms of comprehension, could you resist the backlash of heaven and earth? These 4 slashes, each slash was harder than the last, and the backlash was also stronger with each slash. The first time, Ling Han could practically ignore it, and the second time he felt it. This third time, he had to take it seriously. Then what about the fourth? Furthermore, he was going to reach the 5th severance, which was even more terrifying. He deduced on this basis, and felt that it would be very, very difficult for him to survive the backlash of heaven and earth after the 5th severance. Even if he cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, it wouldn't be of much help. Rising from the ashes, he would still continue to be insta-killed the moment he came back to life. 5th severance, wasn't that the decapitation strike? Heaven never bars one's way, Small Tower said. In Celestial King tier level sects, Celestial Kings would prepare natural peach seals for those disciples with nature-defying talent. This can conceal heaven's secrets and send down the might of divine punishment of the 1st severance. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. After using the natural peach seal, the 5th severance was actually passed as the 4th severance. Then he was confident. Furthermore, if it was passed normally, he might have a 1 in a billion chance of success, but the Empress definitely couldn't. Even a supreme divine fetus formed from the 9 deaths heaven art couldn't possibly match the backlash of heaven and earth of the 5th severance. Natural peach seal? What is that? Ling Han asked. One of the mother trees of the celestial realm. An existence that stands on equal footing with the reincarnation tree, Small Tower said. However, the leaves of the natural peach tree can't help one comprehend Tao, and can only conceal heaven's secrets. This was already awesome enough, being able to deceive even heaven and earth. Where can I get one? The Rock Palace should have one. The Rock Palace? As Ling Han resisted the heavenly tribulation, his mind wandered. He had come to the Fu clan to find out the location of the Rock Palace. Now, since he knew that the Rock Palace was in the Western Celestial Realm, and the 5th severance definitely required the natural peach seal, he had to hurry over as soon as possible. After advancing into the dividing soul tier, the natural peach seal naturally lost its purpose. All right, I'll go to the Western Celestial Realm after I leave the Mystery Realm, Ling Han roared, and waved his fist angrily at the heavens. This dog's hit heavenly Tao. What was it doing tormenting people like this? Half a day later, no matter how much the heaven and earth wanted to erase Ling Han, it could only withdraw the tribulation lightning and disperse. 3rd severance. Ling Han sensed for a moment, and a smile appeared on his lips. The present him was indescribably strong. At least, if he encountered Zai Bingyun again, he was confident that he could kill her within 1,000 moves. That was because he still had 2 source powers of heaven and earth. So what if she was an emperor tier? Husband saw the heavenly tribulation disperse, and the Empress floating over, her expression proud. This was pride for Ling Han. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro was gaping in shock in the distance. She knew that Ling Han had only been in the middle stage of the 2nd severance previously, though they had all advanced to the peak stage in the Ascending Dragon Palace. The accumulation of time needed to advance from the peak stage of the 2nd severance to the 3rd severance was mind-numbingly long. She was an experienced person. Even if the sect had used a secret treasure that sped up the flow of time for her by 1,000 times, saving 300,000 years of time, she had still used a whole 1 million years time in total. You were in the mystery realm, and could not use time treasures, so it had only been over half a year, and most of the time was spent digging rocks. Even if you had refined a celestial medicine, it would not be so exaggerated. This guy was really a monster. Ling Han smiled at the Empress and said, "Let's go to the cave." He had a mountain treasure in his possession, and Zai Bingyan could not possibly find a mountain treasure in such a short time. So the most likely thing that she would do was to lie in ambush near the cave and wait for him to open the door before making a move to snatch it. If Zai Bingyan really planned to do that, then this would be the place where she would die. Ling Han had rarely hated someone so much that he was determined to kill them. But as for Zai Bingyan, if he did not kill her, he would feel that his conscience would not be able to live with it. The three of them walked towards the middle of the mountain together. Not long after, the cave appeared. It was very ordinary, and a few rocks blocked the entrance. It looked like they would be able to enter as long as they were moved away. That naturally could not be moved. Ling Han had tried, but each rock was heavier than a galaxy, and was not something that he could move at all. He took out the mountain treasure and placed it on a rock as the dwarf had said. Then he waited quietly. Sometimes it would be half a day, and sometimes it would be 3 days, and the cave would open. "You can scram now." It was at this moment that a figure appeared. Luo Changfeng. Chapter 1829. Luo Changfeng was actually quite depressed. At first, he had thought that he would definitely come out on top this time, and the only one who could compete with him was Zai Bingyan. But when he came out of the Ascending Dragon Hall, he found himself falling behind step by step. The entrance to this place was discovered by Ling Han, and he brought a large group of people with him. At first, he had thought that if they split up, he would be the first to find the heavenly Dao Jade. But reality proved that he had not even touched the edge of it. If it were not for the fact that he had encountered Zai Bingyan, he still would not have known that the heavenly Dao Jade was very possibly hidden in this cave, and the way to open it was the mountain treasure. And now, even the mountain treasure was found by Ling Han first. It doesn't matter, he said to himself. Although he was falling behind step by step, as long as he could turn the tables at the last moment and seize the heavenly Dao Jade. So what? It was not that he had not suspected why Zai Bingyan would deliberately tell him such valuable information. Perhaps this was only a lie, but Zai Bingyan had drawn out a sliver of her memories for him to see. That was the information she had obtained when she had extracted the souls of the dwarfs. Therefore, although Luo Changfeng was still a little hesitant, he would still envelop this cave with his divine sense every day. He didn't expect that Ling Han would really bring the mountain treasure here a few days later. Haha, the heavenly Dao Jade is his. Facing Ling Han, he was naturally filled with a sense of superiority. Previously, Ling Han had obediently made way for him, which meant that Ling Han was afraid of his identity as the holy son of a celestial king-tier sect. Moreover, he was an emperor-level genius. "What are you waiting for?" he said arrogantly. Ling Han narrowed his eyes at him. Did this guy really think he was so awesome? He laughed and said, "Come show me how to roll. If you roll well, I will reward you." Luo Changfeng was also taken aback for a moment before he came to his senses. "Damn, how dare you make fun of me? How dare you?" Luo Changfeng sneered, but he did not get angry. There was no need for him to do so. He was such a noble existence, and he would not get angry at a nobody. That was really too much for Ling Han. If he didn't like it, he could just wipe it away. Thankfully, a certain fellow is not here. Otherwise, you would have to be careful of your butt right now. Ling Han could not help but smile. The word dog could not be mentioned carelessly. What does that mean? Hiss, you can't be lusting after my ass, right? Pervert. Luo Changfeng couldn't help but burst with killing intent. This guy actually dared to use his brain. He was really courting death. He snorted and said, "Since you insist on seeking death, then I will." Xiao. He hadn't even finished speaking when Ling Han had already charged over, and Ling Han had struck out with a palm strike that blasted down towards his head. Luo Changfeng was unbearably angry. "Who the hell did you think you were? You actually dared to take the initiative to attack me. Go to hell." He pointed 2 fingers at Ling Han, and at the tip of his fingers was the shadow of a star, exuding an astonishing aura. Bam! The 2 of them exchanged a blow, and both of them trembled and took a few steps back. It was actually a tie. Luo Changfeng's face suddenly became very interesting. He had indeed seen Ling Han's powerful physique before, but that was all there was to it. In terms of battle prowess, Ling Han was far inferior to him, especially when he had reached the peak stage of the third severance. Thus, he was even more confident that he could suppress everything. But Ling Han could actually fight against him. He couldn't believe it. More frighteningly, the ripples of the latter's aura were clearly only in the early stage of the third severance. Third severance early stage, and he could fight against him. It should be known that he was a king among kings. Putting aside being invincible among his peers, he could suppress king tiers that were a whole cultivation level above him. It had always been him who defied his cultivation level to defeat others. But now, he was actually the one being defied. This was a massive blow to his confidence. On the side, bewitching Maiden Ro was also shocked numb. In a battle of equals, it was even Luo Changfeng who had the upper hand in terms of cultivation level. But the result of the clash was a tie. Then, if the two of them had the exact same cultivation level, wouldn't that mean that Ling Han was slightly superior? This guy was really too freakish, actually stronger than the holy son of a celestial king tier level sect. There was no need to fear ignorance, only comparison. The two great emperor tiers were both prodigies that dazzled the world. Individually, either one was incredibly outstanding, but when they were put together and compared, there was immediately a difference in superiority. Monarch tier. Luo Changfeng's voice was slightly trembling and filled with jealousy. King tiers could be invincible among their peers, and king among kings, in other words, emperor tiers, could be invincible across a minor level, and monarch tiers were invincible across two minor levels. In truth, the number of king tiers was extremely rare. Normally, only 3-star forces could nurture them. As for a sect, they would only have 4 or 5, and at most, there wouldn't be more than 10, and if it was emperor tiers, they would have to go to celestial king tier level forces to find them. 4-star forces would occasionally have such prodigies appear, but being able to produce one was already incredibly lucky. But monarch tiers? That could only possibly appear in top-grade celestial king tier level forces. For example, a 9th heaven celestial king tier. Though the Thundercloud Palace had a celestial king overseeing it, this master was only a 2nd heaven celestial king. And who knew how far away he was from a 9th heaven celestial king? There were 9 levels of celestial king tier, and every step was like reaching the heavens. But now, a young monarch tier had possibly appeared in front of him. Who exactly are you? Luo Changfeng asked darkly. He was an emperor tier, after all, so though he was shocked, he didn't panic. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Ling Han, just a mere trifle, don't take it to heart. How could he not take it to heart? Luo Changfeng stared coldly at Ling Han. Was there really such a freakish person, who relied on his own talent and hard work to become a monarch tier? No, what was a monarch tier? That needed to be a 5th severance, but Ling Han was clearly only a 3rd severance, and could only be called an emperor tier. Since there was a hierarchy of king tiers, why didn't there be a hierarchy for emperor tiers? Since you are just a trifle, then please die. Luo Changfeng shook his arms. Ka. Golden light suddenly soared from his arms, and then turned into multiple symbols that stuck closely to his arms, forming a pair of gauntlets. He stood just like that, his whole person exuding a domineering aura that said, if I can't do it, then who can? Zai Bingyan had the supreme regulations that the celestial king had bestowed upon her, and he had this pair of gauntlets. This had been used by that celestial king of the Thundercloud Palace, and contained a sliver of his aura. Though it was only a sliver, it was enough to sweep away all severing mundane tiers. When it came to celestial kings, they were always very awesome. Luo Changfeng crooked his finger, his disdain evident in his words. Aren't you a trifle? Then I'll take you as a trifle. Ling Han chuckled. It was just that looking at this gauntlet of Luo Changfeng, this thing could be refined by the divine demon sword again. Awesome. In front of a celestial king, all are ants. Luo Changfeng declared in a condescending tone. Blabbering, take a punch from me. Ling Han charged out, his fists entwined with 2 kinds of source powers. This was enough to resist the aura of a celestial king. You overestimate yourself. Luo Changfeng smirked coldly, and also punched out with both fists. The patterns on the gauntlets lit up one after another, and the power of Great Tao was boundless. That was an aura that could crush the severing mundane tier. Ling Han was a person who would become stronger when encountering strong opponents. His two source powers were limited by his cultivation level and could not explode with their full might, but when encountering the provocation of a celestial king's aura, their might naturally increased. Pung, the two of them exchanged another blow. Their figures both slid back, and it was once again a tie. Chapter 1830. This time, Luo Changfeng's expression really changed and even his scalp began to go numb. He had already used Celestial King tier techniques, yet he was actually still unable to suppress Ling Han. This brat was either a descendant of a Celestial King, or he had obtained a supreme fortuitous encounter to be able to match a Celestial King's technique. His eyes instantly lit up. If it was the latter, then if he obtained it, he might have a chance to become an immortal king. How many holy sons and holy virgins have the Thundercloud Temple produced? A lot. Generation after generation. After the old holy sons and old holy daughters advanced into the ascending origin tier, they no longer held the position of holy sons and holy daughters. Instead, they became elders. But for almost an epoch, the Thundercloud Palace had not produced a second celestial king. Why? It was too difficult to become a celestial king, and even a celestial king tier force would find it very difficult to nurture a true successor. However, celestial kings truly had limitless lifespans. Even a mortal's tribulation could easily shatter them, so there was no need to fear that their entire faction would collapse if they passed away one day. Luo Changfeng was confident that he could reach the ascending origin tier, but to become a celestial king was practically impossible. Therefore, he needed the heavenly Dao Jade to unleash the fifth slash. If he succeeded in advancing to the fifth severance, then becoming a celestial king was a sure thing, and it would definitely not be limited to the first level. However, other than the heavenly Dao Jade, there were still some treasures in this world that could help one advance into the celestial king tier. For example, the origin of heaven and earth. He looked closely at Ling Han's hands, and his heart skipped a beat. You obtain the source energy of heaven and earth. Ling Han was slightly surprised that the other party could recognize the nine heavens flame and the Xianin source water. When he saw Ling Han's expression, Luo Changfeng immediately became certain that he had guessed correctly. And when Ling Han saw the look of realization on his face, he also understood that the other party was actually just guessing. He didn't hide anything. He opened his right hand and boom, a flame rose up. It was completely formed from symbols of the great Tao. This is the nine heavens flame. Then he stretched out his left hand and similarly opened it. This time, however, cold air rose. This is the Xianin source water. Fuck me. Luo Changfeng had almost never cursed in his life, but right now, he had a strong impulse to do so. How rare and precious was the source of heaven and earth. Even the majority of celestial kings could not possibly possess them, but a mere third severance cultivator actually possessed two source powers of heaven and earth. Is there any justice left? A smile gradually appeared at the corners of Luo Changfeng's mouth, and then he burst into laughter. Ling Han. Oh, Ling Han, you are really my lucky star. Ling Han also laughed and said, are you trying to say that I came all the way here just to give you two strands of heaven and earth's essence? Is that not the case? Luo Changfeng asked proudly. He was now sure that Ling Han was definitely not the heir of a celestial king tier force. Otherwise, which celestial king would allow their disciple to possess two source powers of the heaven and earth? Since that was the case, what right did Ling Han have to rival celestial kings? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he had two source powers of the heaven and earth? Ling Han shook his head and said, in your dreams. Oh, then what about me as well? Zai Bingyun's voice rang out. Her figure also appeared lightly, holding a sword in her right hand that was as bright as autumn water. Luo Changfeng frowned slightly, but immediately relaxed. He had now guessed that the reason Zai Bingyun had told him about the mountain treasure was actually because she was targeting Ling Han and wanted to use him to deal with Ling Han. But to be honest, though his words were filled with confidence, he was similarly filled with wariness towards Ling Han. If he joined forces with Zai Bingyun, then with the combined abilities of two great celestial kings, they would definitely be able to achieve victory. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and his killing intent instantly blazed as he stared at Zai Bingyun. I want the 9 heavens flame, Luo Changfeng said. Sure. Zai Bingyun nodded, and the two of them instantly formed an alliance. One wanted the 9 heavens flame, and the other wanted the Xianing source water. They also knew that with the other's existence, they could not possibly monopolize 2 source powers of the heaven and earth, and could only share. However, even if it was just 1 source power of the heaven and earth, it was already incredibly awesome, and even the majority of celestial kings would only be envious. Those who obtained the source power of the heaven and earth would definitely become celestial kings, and those who did not would definitely die. Ling Han smirked coldly. 2 dead people, and you are still daydreaming. Die. Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun both launched attacks at Ling Han at the same time, one on the left and one on the right. Though they had not joined forces before, as Emperor tiers, they only needed a single look to understand each other's intentions, and their cooperation was seamless. Ling Han was going to face 2 great Emperor tiers at the same time. The Empress did not move. Though she was an Emperor tier, there was a gap of a minor level between them, and she could not be of much help to Ling Han. It was better for her to stay on the sidelines obediently, so as not to cause trouble for Ling Han. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro was restless. She could just about stand against an Emperor tier at the peak stage of the 3rd Severance. But Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng both had Celestial King tier techniques, and against this kind of secret technique, she could only hold a grudge. Thus, when she saw that the Empress did not move, she also sat on the sidelines and watched. Ling Han was battling the heirs of 2 great Celestial King tier forces alone, yet was not the slightest bit afraid. The 9 heavens flame, and the Xianing source water twined around his fists, and he shot out one punch after another, completely unreasonable. He was going to use this kind of method to crush his opponent, who asked this to be his source power, so he was completely unafraid of exhausting it. But Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng could not. One had a Celestial King tier Dao regulation, and the other a Celestial tool, and there would come a time when their power would be exhausted. Which one of them dared to clash head-on with him like this? When the strong met, the brave would emerge victorious. Ling Han showed his full dominance, and Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng could only dodge his attacks. They wanted to wait for Ling Han to be exhausted, and then launch a vigorous counterattack to kill Ling Han. But how could such an attempt possibly succeed? We can't go on like this, Zai Bingyun transmitted to Luo Changfeng. Luo Changfeng was deeply convinced. At this moment, how could he dare underestimate Ling Han in the slightest? Instead, he coveted the 9 heavens flame, and the Xianing source water even more. Though Celestial King tier techniques were powerful, that was not power that belonged to them, after all, and there would come a time when they would be exhausted. But if they had been refined by a source power of heaven and earth, that would be a completely different matter. This person in front of him was clear proof. Not only could he match Celestial King tier techniques, by relying on 2 great source powers of heaven and earth, he could also squander them wantonly because he did not have to worry about exhaustion, and did not have to worry about running out of energy in the future. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind, and he said, "This is the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm." Zai Bingyun was also a smart person, and immediately came to a realization. As long as they lost the Blood Dragon armor, the fire element of heaven and earth would be able to kill even Immortal Palace tiers. For example, even if they had Celestial King tier techniques, they would have to wear the Blood Dragon armor before they dared to enter. The Celestial King tier techniques were mainly targeted at the Heavenly Dao Jade, and not the fire element of this place. Of course, it was not that Celestial Kings did not have methods to help them resist the fire element of heaven and earth, but something that could be solved with a Blood Dragon armor. Why would they need to do something unnecessary? The 2 great Emperor tiers immediately found a countermeasure, and when they once again launched an attack on Ling Han, they madly attacked the clothes on his body. This Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. You two should know that he was not wearing the Blood Dragon armor at all. If I told you, I was really afraid that you two would not be able to bear it. Pung pung pung. But Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng did not consider anything else at all. They thought that they had found the best way to deal with Ling Han, and did not hesitate to destroy him at all costs, determined to make Ling Han completely naked. Chapter 1832. Luo Changfeng was engaged in a fierce mental struggle. Going or not? If he wanted to leave, now was the best time. Even if Zai Bingyan was already at the end of her tether, for the sake of her life, a person could explode with endless fighting spirit. No matter what, she would be able to hold on for a period of time, and it would be enough for him to leave. However, once he left, the heavenly Dao Jade would definitely fall into Ling Han's hands. But it was only an instant before he made his decision and turned to leave. That was because even he and Zai Bingyan had not been able to kill Ling Han in their peak condition just then. So why could they do it now? Most importantly, Ling Han was practically a monster. He was actually unaffected in this mystic realm. Shua! A flash of sword light rose up and stopped him. It was the Empress. Though bewitching Maiden Ro was willing to stand out for Ling Han, it was more out of a sense of morality and repaying a debt of gratitude. However, she did not dare to kill the holy son of a celestial king tier-level sect. Once Luo Changfeng or Zai Bingyan died here, it would be fine if they knew who the murderer was. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. But if they were dead and there was no evidence, then it was not impossible that a celestial king tier-level force would kill all of them in fury. Besides, if it was because of her that Luo Changfeng was killed, then the Purity sect would be razed to the ground. How could you reason with the celestial king tier force? Who would listen to you? So she just stood aside. Luo Changfeng's eyes swept over the Empress, and he said, "Come with me, and I can strive to make you the holy daughter of my sect." Shua! The Empress shot out a flash of sword chi. This was her answer. Luo Changfeng no longer had the slightest bit of wishful thinking. He delivered a palm strike at the Empress, and his figure shot out rapidly. At this moment, escaping was the most important thing. The Empress humphed, and all 9 of her clones appeared. Then, she summoned 100 battle beasts of flames, and used the unique environment of this place to strengthen her battle prowess, so that she could stand against a 3rd Severance Peak stage Emperor tier. However, it was not a problem for him to fight Luo Changfeng for the time being. After all, Luo Changfeng was currently in a weakened state. Even so, with the enhancement of a celestial king's treasure, Luo Changfeng could shatter a battle beast with a single punch, showing an invincible momentum. Fortunately, the environment here was special. If a beast was destroyed, it could just be condensed again. There was an abundance of fire element here, and with the addition of the flame control technique, the Empress had an endless supply of fire element. The Empress's strategy was also incredibly clear. She would stall Luo Changfeng, and when Ling Han was free, he would naturally be able to eliminate him. Bewitching Maiden Ro's heart thumped furiously, and an indescribable chill rose up in her heart. Yet there was also an indescribable excitement. Slaying the holy son and successor of a celestial king tier force. How audacious was this? But what a sense of accomplishment! Ling Han stared at Zai Bingyan. He had already unsheathed the divine demon sword, and similarly summoned 10 battle beasts. After advancing into the 3rd Severance, the strength of these battle beasts had also improved greatly. Each one of them was no weaker than Zai Bingyan. What more when there were 10 of them? And there was also Ling Han, 2 great source powers of heaven and earth, as well as the divine demon sword. With all these added together, how could Zai Bingyan, who was at the end of her rope, be able to stand against them? If you kill me, you will definitely be hunted down by the elites of my Zai clan. Offending a celestial king tier force, you will not be able to escape even if you flee to the ends of the world, Zai Bingyan threatened. In this kind of situation, she did not beg for mercy. Ling Han ignored her. He had long since sworn that he would definitely destroy this inhuman woman. Zai Bingyan put her life on the line. But if it was another person, she might still be able to succeed. But how strong was Ling Han's physique? Even if she put her life on the line, he would not be afraid. No matter how fierce her attack was, it would only cause him some superficial wounds at most. Her eyes involuntarily shone with a ferocious light. If she had to die, she would drag Ling Han down with her. Zai Bingyun's body shuddered and suddenly became transparent. Because the blood dragon armor on her body had already been mostly damaged, the organs under her skin could be clearly seen through the holes. Then, her whole person became transparent, as if she was going to disappear from where she was. Ling Han slashed out with his sword, yet she did not dodge or evade. Instead, she increased her speed and pounced towards Ling Han, her arms spread wide. Pooh! The divine demon sword pierced through her body, but a fierce expression appeared on Zai Bingyun's face. She clasped her hands together and hugged Ling Han tightly. To outsiders, this scene was extremely erotic. A man and a woman, both of them disheveled, and were hugging each other in an extremely intimate manner. Anyone who saw this would have their imaginations running wild, right? But in reality, there was not the slightest bit of romance between the two of them, only endless killing intent. Multiple symbols appeared on Zai Bingyun's delicate body. This was her true ultimate move, and also her final ultimate move. At the cost of detonating her divine fetus, she would perish together with her enemy. Under her firm lock, Ling Han could not even enter into the Black Tower, and could only take this attack head-on. Void Storm, Zai Bingyun uttered softly, and then with a boom, her whole person exploded, turning into a terrifying frenzy of regulations. Ling Han was the next in line, and instantly felt as if his divine body was about to be torn apart, but his physique was too strong. After advancing into the third severance, it was almost reaching the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. He humphed coldly and channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. Actively channeling it, his defenses would be raised to a frightening height in a short period of time, and he would probably be able to withstand even a blow from an Soul elite. No matter how desperately Zai Bingyun fought, she was merely at the peak stage of the third severance. No matter how king among kings you were, you might not even be able to break through the line of dividing soul tier. What more battle prowess that could match a soul? Hong! The void storm raged wildly, but Ling Han remained calm and collected. Zai Bingyun's whole person was turning into regulations. After this extremely refined strike, she would also turn into Tao and become a part of the heaven and earth. She showed an expression of disbelief. Such a blow actually had no effect on Ling Han? She was already fighting with her life on the line, so couldn't you at least suffer some serious injuries? But she was already powerless to do anything. Her delicate body shattered like porcelain, and her divine sense also shattered, dispersing with the wind. Ling Han was neither sad nor happy. Killing people had never been a pleasurable thing, but if he did not kill Zai Bingyun, he would be letting down the tribe of dwarves that had died innocently. He told Luo Changfeng that since he had started killing, he did not mind killing a few more people. Luo Changfeng felt all the hair on his body stand on end when he saw Ling Han's gaze. He gave a battle cry and broke out of the encirclement without regard for anything else. He definitely could not be entangled by Ling Han, or he would follow in Zai Bingyun's footsteps. As the holy son of a celestial king tier level sect, he would definitely become an ascending origin tier elite in future, and even had hopes of becoming a celestial king. So how could he die here? With this desperate attack, the Empress was instantly unable to block him any longer, allowing Luo Changfeng to break out of the encirclement, but he had also paid the price of being wounded by a considerable number of battle beasts. But at this moment, he did not care anymore. Ling Han activated Lightning Flash and chased after Luo Changfeng. A look of humiliation and annoyance flashed across Luo Changfeng's face. In his eyes, Ling Han was a scum, but he was actually being hunted down by a scum, which made him feel extremely humiliated. Once we get out of this place, he said in his heart. Ling Han had 2 source powers of the heaven and earth on him, and he might even obtain the heavenly Dao Jade. He would definitely not allow him to swagger away. He would definitely ask the elites accompanying him to make a move, suppress Ling Han, and seize all the fated chances. Crackle, crackle, crackle. His body erupted with the power of his innate lightning physique, and his speed was as fast as flowing light. Chapter 1833. Ling Han used Lightning Flash, and was similarly astonishingly fast as he chased closely after him. Both of them were as fast as lightning, crackling and crackling. Blazing white lightning blazed densely, and the strange phenomenon was astonishing. Vanish. Ling Han stretched out his right hand and pressed down towards Luo Changfeng. Luo Changfeng immediately felt a chill that made his hair stand on end, and he hurriedly gritted his teeth. Chi! The lightning on his body actually grew stronger again, and his speed exploded again, inconceivably increasing a little more. He was actually even faster than this attack from Ling Han. Vanish missed its target. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This natural lightning physique was really a little awesome. Luo Chafeng had even dodged this. Before this, only that mutated celestial medicine had managed to do it, because that thing grew by absorbing regulations of lightning. I'll give it a try too. As Ling Han gave chase, the regulations of lightning that he had obtained from absorbing the celestial medicine surged in his mind. Before this, he had only used the celestial medicine to interweave and resonate with heaven and earth, and from then on quickly comprehended Tao, pushing open the door to the third severance. He had not had time to digest the two regulations that the celestial medicine itself contained. It was not too late to make a last-minute effort, because these regulations had already been refined by Ling Han. 3 days under the reincarnation tree. That was 300 years of comprehension, and it was enough to refine those regulations. However, while he had refined them, he had not used them yet, and did not know how to use them. He comprehended them. Z, the light of lightning flashed. Actually, Ling Han was the most knowledgeable about regulations of lightning, because as early as when he was in the small world, he would often shatter his own divine body to be tempered by heavenly lightning, and also observe heaven's might in passing, turning it into his own ability. Afterwards, he obtained the 9 heavens flame, and further obtained the Xianing source water. There were 2 source powers of heaven and earth in his body, which was equivalent to having 2 celestial kings imparting great Tao to him unreservedly at all times. He was naturally more inclined towards these 2 aspects. But this did not mean that his comprehension of regulations of lightning was inferior. On the contrary, he had developed a great many mystical powers through regulations of lightning. Had he drunk so much heavenly tribulation fluid for nothing? Therefore, when the laws of lightning of the immortal medicine surged into his sea of consciousness, he quickly formed his own understanding after analyzing it. One had to realize that this stock of celestial medicine was most proficient in fleeing, and its speed was even faster than that of the large black dog. However, the large black dog could also teleport, and that was why he was able to intercept it. True lightning speed. Ling Han's eyes glowed, and then turned into a blazing white, as if his eyeballs were formed from lightning. Following that, his entire body flashed with lightning, and his figure began to accelerate. Pa 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 pa. Wherever his body moved, there were still sparks of electricity left in the air crackling. He has a new lightning flash immortal technique. Then, Luo Changfeng shockingly discovered that Ling Han was rapidly shortening the distance between them. He was so shocked that he almost spat out his tongue. One had to know that this was a divine ability, nurtured by his innate lightning physique. Even he could not maintain such an extreme speed for a long time. There was no helping it. His cultivation was limited, so he could only unleash this much power. However, this was already incredibly awesome. He was confident that no one in the severing mundane tier could compare to him. But Ling Han? This was no longer comparable but had surpassed him. Could it be that this guy possessed, in addition to water and fire, 2 source powers of heaven and earth? He also possessed lightning element source power of heaven and earth? Why could you be any more freakish? His scalp was numb, but Ling Han was getting closer and closer, and was only a little bit away from entering into attack range. Luo Changfeng humphed and said, Ling Han, you have killed Zai Bingyan, so you will definitely be hunted down by a celestial king tier force. If you further offend our Thundercloud Palace, you will not have the slightest chance of survival. Ling Han laughed loudly. You speak as if your Thundercloud Palace would let me go if I did not hunt you down. There is no great enmity between us, Luo Changfeng consoled. Ling Han scoffed and said, Do you think I am an idiot? You already know that I possess 2 source powers of heaven and earth, and will also obtain the heavenly Tao Jade later. With your greed, it is obvious that you would let me go. If I leave the mystery realm, you will definitely invite the elites of the Thundercloud Palace to deal with me. Luo Changfeng's heart clenched. He indeed thought so. How could that be possible? I swear on my reputation. What he thought was one thing, but he would definitely not admit it. Ling Han shook his head. Luo Changfeng, you are not even comparable to a woman. Those Ibingyan should have died 10,000 times. At least she still has a backbone. And even when faced with death, it is only a great battle. Unlike you are only short of kneeling to her. Luo Changfeng was furious. He was the holy son of the Thundercloud Palace, and it had always been others who kneeled to him. Ling Han, you are digging your own grave, he shouted loudly. Don't think that you can look down on everyone in this world, just because you have the 9 heavens flame and Xianing source water. You are only at the 3rd severance, and any dividing soul tear would be able to suppress you. If a dividing soul tear directly came into contact with the source power of heaven and earth, they would definitely die on the spot. But against a 3rd severance, a dividing soul tear elite could crush him with a palm strike from afar. How could they possibly give Ling Han the chance to get close? Ling Han laughed loudly. Luo Changfeng, do you think that 2 great source powers are my trump card for being arrogant? His trump card was the Black Tower. At least, dividing soul tears, or even immortal palace tier elites could not possibly discover a clue. Luo Changfeng couldn't help but falter, an incredibly strong chill suddenly surging up in his heart. If 2 source powers were not Ling Han's trump card, then what was it? In this world, was there anything more powerful than a source power of heaven and earth? The only thing that Luo Changfeng could think of was a celestial king. But how could Ling Han bring a celestial king along with him? Wasn't that a joke? But no matter what, Ling Han did not seem like a fool. He clearly knew that killing him and Zai Bingyan would not end well. But the other party still acted without any qualms, and pursued them with no qualms. You, who exactly are you? Luo Changfeng was really scared this time, feeling that even the Thundercloud Palace could not give him a sense of security. Guess, Ling Han said smilingly. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Luo Changfeng's mind. There were 9 heavens in the Celestial King tier, and every step was like reaching the heavens. This was definitely not just a saying. Even if they were both Celestial King tier level sects, could one founded by a 1st heaven Celestial King compare to a 2nd heaven Celestial King? It was unknown how far off. The Celestial King of the Thundercloud Palace was a 1st heaven Celestial King, so he should not only be at the bottom among Celestial Kings, but a Celestial King was a Celestial King, and could suppress all ages. As long as he did not battle to the death with another Celestial King, he would be in eternal existence. Could it be that Ling Han was the heir of a 2nd heaven Celestial King, a 3rd heaven Celestial King, or even a 9th heaven Celestial King? Otherwise, how could he be so confident? Furthermore, what Celestial King would be willing to bestow 2 source powers of heaven and earth to his disciple? Only 9th heaven Celestial Kings, because they had already reached the absolute peak, and even source powers of heaven and earth were completely meaningless. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What if I am willing to acknowledge you as my master?" When he said these words, even his heart was ringing in pain, and he felt as if the sky had collapsed. He was a dignified holy son of the Thundercloud Palace, and he actually took the initiative to beg to become someone's lackey, reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1834. Being able to say these words, putting aside the fact that Luo Changfeng's face was burning, even Ling Han was slightly surprised. Fuck, was this guy really a holy son? He was really too shameless, wasn't he? There were things that people should do and shouldn't do. No one was willing to die, and Ling Han understood this. He too was afraid of death, but if it was to protect his lover and kin, he would step forward without hesitation. And if it was for dignity, he would rather die than kneel. This was called backbone, a great holy son. And a holy son of a Celestial King tier level sect at that, could actually kneel to such an extent? Utterly shameless. You make me feel disgusted, Ling Han said, and struck out with a palm strike. He had already entered into effective attack range. Banishment. Luo Changfeng's face was red, but he was inwardly disapproving. He was a great emperor tier, a divine fetus that would only appear once in a billion years. So how could he die in a tiny mystery realm? He had an infinitely beautiful future, and his journey was the stars, the great self-fuck. His vision darkened, and he had already entered into an alternate dimension. Luo Changfeng did not know what was going on, and naturally paled in shock. He hurriedly unleashed his full power, and began a frenzied attack. This alternate dimension could originally last for about a breath's time, but under his violent attacks, it was immediately shattered. Luo Changfeng charged out, and then an iron fist came crashing down at his face. This bit of time was enough for Ling Han to catch up. Luo Changfeng was greatly shocked, and hurriedly stretched out his fist to block. Pung, the punch passed, and his whole person was instantly sent flying back. After activating the arm armor beyond its limit, his battle prowess had also fallen to rock bottom, and he was no longer able to stand against Ling Han. Ling Han did not show mercy, and shot out another violent punch. Pung Luo Changfeng was sent flying again, and this time, he was even sent flying. Ling Han used Lightning Flash to catch up. This was the strengthened version of Lightning Flash now, and he instantly caught up with Luo Changfeng, and then shot out a rain of punches. Pung 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 pung. Iron Fist struck, and Luo Changfeng could only take the beating. His four limbs were all spread open, and his whole body trembled violently, spurting out blood. His chest was soon dented by Ling Han, and then it was forcibly pierced through. Blood spurted out wildly, and one could see the piles of bones and organs. Ling Han remained indifferent, and when he punched out again, he had already condensed the nine heavens flame. With this strike, Luo Changfeng would definitely die. At this moment, Luo Changfeng finally lost all hope and gave up. He knew that Ling Han would never let him go. His eyes bulged as he roared, "Then let's die together." Blood dripped from his eyes, but they were immediately turned into ashes by the power of thunder that surged out of his body. His entire body turned into a blazing white, losing his physical body, and turning into a ball of thunder and lightning. The innate lightning physique and immortal fetus were actually formed from a segment of Immortal King laws. Right now, he was using his life as the price to detonate this segment of Immortal King laws. It was enough to kill all severing mundane tears. Luo Changfeng had a hideous grin on his face. In that case, he would take one of them to hell with him. Very foolish and very naive. Ling Han shook his head. Didn't he see that Zai Bingyun had also detonated her immortal fetus? But what use was it to him? Could you be more kick-ass than Zai Bingyun? Even if you could, how kick-ass could you be? Boom! The lightning exploded, forming a massive spherical area of lightning. The lightning blazed densely, annihilating all the living beings within. This kind of shock wave, to say nothing of a fourth severance, even a severing mundane peak stage king tier, could be insta-killed. Even if they were not insta-killed, they would at least be severely wounded. How could the self-detonation of a divine fetus, an emperor tier, be simple? However, when the lightning had wreaked havoc, Ling Han was still standing proudly. But what made him speechless was that the clothes that he had just tied up had been blown away again, causing him to once again look naked. Luo Changfeng's body had already turned into ashes, but his remnant soul had not completely dissipated. When it returned to the Tao of heaven and earth, he was indignant at Ling Han. This kind of attack had actually not even managed to wound a single part of Ling Han's skin. What kind of monster are you exactly? In the end, he did not have the time to ask the last question. His spirit dissipated, and completely returned to the heaven and earth. Ling Han's eyes swept over. Extremely far away, there were currently 3 people trembling in fear. When his eyes swept over, those 3 people immediately turned around and fled. It was as if their souls had left their bodies, and they ran extremely quickly. Lin Fang, Tung Sun, and Wei Nian, the 3 people that had fled previously. Ling Han did not pursue. The distance was really too far. And those 3 people were king tiers, too. So how could they be so easy to catch up to? Husband. The Empress floated over from afar, and threw herself into his arms. Bewitching Maiden Rose stood in the distance, and felt as if her pretty face was burning. She was also speechless. In a single day, she actually saw Ling Han naked twice. Were you doing this on purpose? Ling Han was also very speechless. Who would have thought that Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng would destroy his clothes? Then, they hugged him and self-detonated, causing him to be naked again. Did they think that he wanted to? However, my figure is actually extremely perfect, so you've taken advantage of me. Ling Han was carried by the Empress, and did not even have the time to put on his clothes. He could only flash, and enter into the Black Tower. In any case, in bewitching Maiden Ro's eyes, this was definitely just an ordinary spatial god tool. The Empress offered a kiss. The man she loved was mighty and domineering, and her passion was like fire. She did not care about the occasion or the place. If she liked him, then she would show it. The whole world was filled with ants, so she needed to care about the methods of others. Being wrapped around by the Empress, who looked so beautiful and alluring, who could resist such charm? Ling Han was naturally no exception. Furthermore, he did not need to resist. This was his wife, a woman that he could love openly and confidently. After a bout of intimacy, Ling Han and the Empress finally exited the Black Tower. Actually, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had also interfered in the process. The absurdity and sensuality of this naturally could not be revealed to others. In any case, it was enough to make Ling Han's legs weak. After exiting the Black Tower, he saw that the cave was still not open, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel slightly guilty. Don't worry, I will not take advantage of the opportunity to steal the treasure, bewitching Maiden Ro said angrily. Though the Empress was dignified, she was astonishingly seductive, and she knew what she and Ling Han had just done. This made her blush. Didn't you two know that there was another person present? Though he could not be seen, he felt like he was just inches away, so it was very embarrassing, all right? Ling Han smiled slightly. Even if bewitching Maiden Ro wanted to steal the treasure, it was actually impossible, because the heavenly Tao Jade was formed from the source power of Earth over millions and millions of years, and was not something that a fourth severance could obtain at all. No matter what, she would have to be like Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng, possessing celestial king tier techniques. Otherwise it would be suicide. This Ling Han definitely would not say it. He only looked at the cave, and thought that he had actually only been intimate with the Empress for as long as a day this time. It seemed like it could rank in the top 5 of the shortest amount of time they had made love. True enough, he still had something in his heart, and could not let go. His distracted appearance caused bewitching Maiden Ro to explode in fury. This was practically the greatest insult to the Purity sect. When he was with her, he actually became distracted, and was still thinking of another woman. Could you bear it? In any case, she could not bear it. Chapter 1836. 3 people? Ling Han was startled at first, and then overjoyed. This damn small tower had made him worry for a moment. After the pleasant surprise, he couldn't help but feel curious, and asked, "Didn't you say that the heavenly Tao Jade can only be refined by 2 people at most? If you think 3 people is too many, you can throw away the extra," Small Tower said shamelessly. "Fine, you win." Ling Han shook his head, and walked out with an infant in each arm. Actually, the infants of the dwarf race were not small, and were practically the same size as an adult. Clearly, they would not grow any taller after they were born. Is there any way to turn them into normal people? Ling Han asked Small Tower. "You are really ignorant," Small Tower scoffed. Small Tower scoffed. "The reason why this race is so small is because they do not cultivate. As their cultivation level increases, their size will naturally increase, and you need to worry about them. Right?" He was looked down upon again. Ling Han propped his chin in introspection. Was there a time when he had not been looked down upon by Small Tower? No, definitely not. This Tsundra Tower seemed to take pleasure in mocking him. Sigh. He had really never seen such a precious tool. It was too disrespectful to its master. "Hee. I am really sorry," Small Tower said with a fake smile, using a tone that would make one angry. Ling Han was sure that Small Tower and the large black dog were bad friends. Even their mocking tone was about the same. This also made him curious. What kind of scammer was the master of the Tower of 3 Realms, to be able to refine a tool spirit like Small Tower? Had the large black dog learned bad things from that person? When Ling Han came out carrying 2 children, The Empress and bewitching maiden Ro were both surprised. You had gone in to retrieve treasures, so why did you come out carrying 2 little treasures? Ling Han explained the situation, and the 2 women finally knew that this was the last descendant of the dwarf race. Let's leave this place. The 3 of them returned the way they had come, and this place had also completed its mission. Perhaps it would return to normal not long after. Ling Han had only told the Empress about the heavenly Dao Jade, though this precious jade could be used by the 3 of them, and bewitching maiden Ro had indeed been in the same boat as them, asking her to share the heavenly Dao Jade like this. Ling Han asked himself that he could not do it. Their relationship hadn't reached that stage yet. Unfortunately, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not advanced into the severing mundane tier yet. Otherwise, she would be able to use the heavenly Dao Jade as her foundation to make up for her previous imperfections. Then, even if she had not struck the heaven and earth to enter into Dao, she would still be able to forcefully reverse the situation. If the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden wanted to take this step, she would need at least 100 million years. Even if Ling Han fed her celestial medicine every day, it would not be possible to shorten the time by too much. The step between immortal and mortal was far too difficult. It was a threshold that truly determined whether one was a king, a genius, or an ordinary person. A day later, they arrived at the Ascending Dragon Palace. There was no one stopping them. They left the palace, and the huge volcano appeared in front of them once more. Black smoke rose from it, and the air was filled with the smell of sulfur. The 2 babies were naturally sent into the Black Tower. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden just so happened to be very bored, so giving her 2 babies to take care of would also help her pass some time. I will definitely return the favor of saving my life, bewitching maiden Ro said to Ling Han. She was slightly indignant. This guy had actually ignored her charm all this while, causing her to even doubt herself. Was she really a great bewitching maiden that could bewitch the world? However, this guy Ling Han was too dangerous. Not only had he killed the heirs of 2 celestial king tier forces, but more importantly, he had left behind a witness. She did not dare to get too close to Ling Han, or she would be attacked as well. If a celestial king tier force made a move, what was the purity sect worth? Thus, she had to draw a clear line between them. Ling Han smiled slightly and casually tossed over a jade vial. Bewitching maiden Ro caught it and asked, "What is this?" "Tea leaves," Ling Han said casually, and then walked forwards with his arm around the Empress's slender waist. Meanwhile, the Empress was slightly dissatisfied. That was the 9 revolutions charm physique, and should have been used by her husband to sleep with her and raise his cultivation level. Why should it benefit others? But since Ling Han was determined to do so, she was not willing to go against Ling Han's wishes. In any case, the lifespan of cultivators was long, and there would still be opportunities in the future. Even if bewitching maiden Ro really had to marry someone, wouldn't she still be able to kidnap the bride? She thought unconcernedly. There was nothing in this world that she did not dare to do. Even if it was a celestial king tier, so what? Sooner or later, she would also be able to reach this cultivation level and challenge the strongest in the world. Bewitching maiden Ro almost smashed the vial in her hand at the back of Ling Han's head. Though she owed Ling Han a favor of saving her life, she had also helped Ling Han and the Empress greatly afterward. No matter what, they were in the same boat through thick and thin. Now that you have obtained some precious treasure, you actually use a vial of tea leaves to dismiss me. You can't be like this. However, she did not throw it away in the end. If she threw it away, wouldn't that be an even greater loss? She really would not have gained anything. Just wait. She would immediately brew these tea leaves, and then pretend that it was Ling Han who drank it to vent his anger. Once she opened the cork, she would discover just how precious this vial of tea leaves was. These were tea leaves that had grown from the mother tree of heaven and earth. Though their effects were slightly inferior now, it was definitely a precious treasure for severing mundane tears. Ling Han did not want to explain. From a certain aspect, he was also filled with wicked tastes. He and the Empress advanced towards that massive volcano, with the 9 heavens flame and the flame control technique that Ling Han had grasped. Not only did he want to obtain more blood dragon stones, he was also slightly curious. What kind of story did that celestial king have? Because they had been delayed for a very long time to collect the heavenly Dao Jade, Ling Han and the Empress were already seriously lagging behind. There was not a single person in their surroundings, and the blood dragon stones on their way had naturally all been picked up by others. It was practically impossible that any had been left behind. Ling Han and the Empress did not have such plans either. Their target was that volcano, and they were determined to do something big. Bewitching Maiden Ro did not lag too far behind, because she also wanted to go to that mountain of fire. The reason was very simple. She had also cultivated the flame control technique, but she did not have the Black Tower, so the time that she had cultivated it was naturally shorter. In terms of control over the flame control technique, she was far inferior to Ling Han and the Empress. But even so, she was able to travel a far greater distance than the others. One could not do as they pleased here, just because they were wearing the blood dragon armor. The closer they got to the volcano, the more terrifying the fire element of heaven and earth would be. Even the blood dragon armor could not protect them all. After traveling for about 10 days, they arrived at a canyon. This was the area that was closest to the volcano. If they went any further, even the blood dragon armor would melt. This canyon was astonishingly large. It was said that this was also a treasured land of feng shui. Among the areas that people could set foot in, this canyon had the most blood dragon stones. Most people would stay here for a good few years, searching for blood dragon stones every day. Moreover, the canyon was also a natural barrier. There was an underground river here that effectively reduced the corrosion of fire element and could greatly extend the lifespan of the blood dragon armor. Thus, even if there were many people searching for blood dragon stones outside the canyon, they would still return here every once in a while to let the blood dragon armor rest for a while. When Ling Han and the Empress arrived at this canyon, they saw that it was like a market. There were many people here. They entered the canyon, and it just so happened that a group of 7 people was about to leave the canyon. And both parties faltered upon seeing this. This was because the 5 people were precisely Fu Gaoyan and his followers, as well as Fu Shaoran and Situ Xiaozhen. Chapter 1837. Be Brother Ling. Fu Gaoyan looked at Ling Han with a strange expression. To say nothing of him, Cheng Zhong and the others didn't look any better either. That was because Ling Han's head was completely bald, and even his eyebrows were gone. That appearance naturally looked extremely unharmonious. Ling Han rubbed his bald head and clenched his teeth. He had forgotten about this. Great. Now his image was completely ruined. How's your harvest? He asked, changing the topic. Brat Ling, is your chrysanthemum all right? Situ Xiaozhen asked with slight concern. Ling Han almost spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm only bald, so why are you concerned about my chrysanthemum? What's the connection between the two? What kind of thinking is this? Meanwhile, Fu Shaoyan could only blush and pretend that she hadn't heard anything. She was completely helpless against this extremely filthy Situ Xiaozhen. Thankfully, Fu Gaoyan spoke up in time and said, Our harvest is not bad. The volcano eruption this time was very violent, and there were more blood dragon stones than the previous few times. Our luck is not bad, and it's a good year. Ling Han, why have you only arrived now? Cheng Zhong asked, though they had already cut all ties. Seeing how enthusiastic Fu Gaoyan was, he could only speak up to express his gratitude. Ling Han smiled and said, I was delayed by some matters. He had no intention of showing off. Cheng Zhong instantly showed an expression of arrogance. You've even stumbled all the way here. You're really useless. Isn't this Ling Han? Another voice rang out. Bei Xianming walked over with his hands tied behind his back, and a few people followed behind him. Among them, one was the most eye-catching, like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. Though Bei Xianming was a holy son, and was also clearly the leader of these people, the limelight had been completely stolen by this person. He was at the peak stage of the 4th severance, and had stayed at this cultivation level for who knew how many years. He had tempered his battle prowess to an incredibly frightening level, and that was why he was showing off like this. How gutsy! After offending the successor of an immortal king clan, You still dare to swagger around here? I really wonder where your courage comes from. Bei Xuanming's face was filled with mockery. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Ling Han looked at him, as if he was looking at a clown. Do you want to know how much courage I have? Jumping clown. You won't be able to cause trouble for much longer. As long as Fairy Zihe encounters you, she will definitely take your life. Bei Xianming scoffed. Then his gaze swept over Fu Xiaoyan, and he said, Fu Xiaoyan, you abandoned me for this kind of trash? Haha, are you regretting it now? Fu Xiaoyan's face was filled with disdain. She was unwilling to marry Bei Xianming not because she had fallen in love with someone else, but purely because Bei Xianming was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, and had no magnanimity. How could such a man be worthy of her? She couldn't be bothered with him. She pursed her lips and treated the person in front of her as heir. Bei Xianming ran into a cold rebuff, and could not help but be enraged. However, out of consideration for Fu Gaoyan, he did not make a move. However, Fu Gaoyan had given all the entry slots to his subordinates, and actually did not bring a single elite with him. This was really too stupid. Shaolin, are you itching for a fight? Bei Xianming turned around to ask that showy person. That person grinned and asked, Lord Holy Sun, who do you want me to beat up? They're those few. Bei Xianming pointed in Fu Gaoyan's direction. This ex-brother-in-law of his always looked down on him, and he had spent so much effort to curry favor with him. Fuck. Now that the marriage had been ruined, he would teach him a good lesson to vent his anger. Revenge. Ha! Putting aside the fact that he would not go to the territory of the Fu clan after this, even if they occasionally crossed paths, with the reputation of the lunar sect, what would the Fu clan dare do to him? It would be fine as long as he did not beat anyone to death. That showy person was called He Shaolin. He looked at Fu Gaoyan with a disdainful smile and said, You all come at me together. I will save some energy and deal with you all at once. Fu Gaoyan and the others were all furious, but the Fu clan had this kind of freak, and they were deeply aware of the strength of this kind of freak. How could they dare to ask for humiliation? They all forcibly suppressed their anger. Who asked Fu Gaoyan to save on entry slots, and did not bring such a freak? What, you don't even dare to fight? He Shaolin scoffed. What heir of the Fu clan? You're practically useless trash. You're at the peak stage of the fourth severance, and you have the nerve to challenge me like this? Fu Xiaoyan could not bear her brother being mocked, and stretched out a hand to rebuke him. Weak is weak. What excuse is there to find? He Shaolin said coldly. Could it be that his cultivation level was given to him by the heavens? Wasn't it something that he had painstakingly cultivated? Fu Gaoyan pressed down with his hand, indicating for his sister to not be rash. He said darkly, I admit defeat this time. Coming out to adventure, who would fight a fair battle with you? The fist was king. Who asked Bei Xianming to grasp the king's way now? Let's go. He waved his hand, and was about to leave with his people. What, you want to leave after saying that? Bei Xianming could not help but sneer. Do you know the rules? Since you admit defeat, you should leave something behind. Fu Gaoyan gritted his teeth, raised his right hand, and paw, slashed down with his palm. Blood sprayed, and his left hand was chopped off. Brother! Fu Xiaoyan exclaimed. Fu Gaoyan, however, did not say anything. He only stared at Bei Xianming. Is that enough? Bei Xianming laughed loudly. This idiot. Back then, he did not want Fu Gaoyan's bootlicking, and now, he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. However, did he think that this would be enough? Since Bei Xianming had started this, he naturally became bold. He said coldly, Not enough. This time, even Cheng Zhong and the others were enraged. Chopping off an arm was not enough for you? What else did you want? Bei Xianming stared at Fu Xiaoyan, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a vicious expression. Fu Xiaoyan, the scene today is all because of you. Since that's the case, the one who started the trouble should be untied. What do you want? Fu Xiaoyan bit her lip tightly. Take off your clothes, Bei Xianming said calmly. Let everyone have a good look at your figure. He had already given up on the thought of marrying Fu Xiaoyan, and when a man wanted revenge, he was sometimes even more vicious than a woman. And Bei Xianming was precisely this kind of person. Fu Xiaoyan's beautiful face instantly paled. If she really stripped naked in front of everyone, would she still have the face to see others in the future? Even if she became a celestial king in the future, it would still be a humiliation that she would never be able to erase. Situ Xiaojun was the first to lose control. She immediately jumped out and said, "Are you still fucking a man? Come on. If you have the guts, then fuck me. I'll force you to death." Ling Han had originally planned to help her out, but when he heard her fierce words, his face twitched. Thankfully, Situ Tang's grandfather was not present. Otherwise, if he heard these words, he would probably spit out a mouthful of blood and die from fury. Bei Xianming grimaced. Even if he was given 10,000 guts, he would not dare to rape the granddaughter of a 3-star alchemist. He waved his hand and said, "Shaolin, since young Miss Fu is unwilling to save me, then just beat them all into submission." "Understood, Lord Holy Sun." He Shaolin bowed slightly. He knew that Bei Xianming's future achievements would definitely far surpass his own, so he was extremely respectful. Then he stared at Fu Gaoyuan and the others with a menacing gaze. Chapter 1838. He Shaolin himself wasn't a king tier, so he looked forward to trampling a king tier beneath his feet. This could be said to be the most wonderful thing in life. He looked at Fu Gaoyuan proudly. This time, he had ruthlessly trampled on Fu Gaoyuan's face. Even if Fu Gaoyuan reached the dividing soul tier, or even the immortal palace tier in the future, he would still not be able to wash away the humiliation he had suffered today. I've broadened my horizons again today. What does it mean to have no bottom line? What does it mean to be a shameless villain? Ling Han shook his head and strode forward. The Empress stood behind him with her hands clasped behind her back. She couldn't be bothered to deal with these trash. "Ling Han, don't be in such a hurry. It's not your turn yet." Bei Xianming sneered. This fellow was truly too naive to think that he would let him off. "But I'm already getting impatient." Ling Han walked forward. He had no interest in Bei Xianming's disgusting performance. Moreover, although he had severed all ties with Fu Gaoyuan, he still owed the latter a favor. At the very least, the blood dragon armor that the Empress was wearing had been given to him by Fu Gaoyuan. Moreover, this fellow was quite a nice person. "Halt!" A man charged out from behind Bei Xianming. He raised his fist and punched towards Ling Han. With a servant around, if the master had to make a move, would there still be any meaning for a servant to exist? This fist smashed over, the power a bit astonishing, triggering the Great Tao. Symbols appeared one after another. This was a third Severance elite, and he had already cultivated to the peak stage. In truth, his battle prowess was even stronger than Bei Xianming's. It was just that he was weaker than He Shaolin. He threw a punch, intending to crush Ling Han. Ling Han made his move. No one knew how he did it. It was just a very casual movement, and that person's wrist was grabbed. And then the attack stopped. Bei Xianming instantly gaped in shock. In his mind, Ling Han was only a first Severance, so no matter how freakish he was, he could not possibly be a match for a third Severance elite. However, this move of his was a resounding slap to his face. Third Severance Ling Han was actually a third Severance? How was this possible? How long had it been? And he had advanced from the first Severance to the third Severance, surpassing her in cultivation level. How could there possibly be such a thing in this world? Does it feel good to beat people up? Ling Han asked the man calmly. That person's bile was about to burst out, and he didn't know how to answer. Ling Han grabbed the other person's hand and slapped his face. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? Every time he asked, he would slap his face. The man's face was bruised and swollen, yet Ling Han had no intention of stopping. Very quickly, blood spurted out, followed by minced flesh and broken teeth. Even his bones were exposed, and the scene was extremely bloody. Ling Han had no sympathy for him at all. This guy clearly wanted to kill him with a single punch. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation speed was fast enough, and that he was an emperor, who could he complain to if he was beaten to death? Stop! Bei Xianming shouted. He had no choice but to drink. If he, the master, did not react when his subordinate was beaten, who would be willing to risk their lives for him in the future? But Ling Han will pay attention to him. Pa pa pa. The slaps were sent flying, and Ling Han was still dragging that person as he closed in on Bei Xianming. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was obvious that he was going to be next. Shaolin, Bei Xianming hurriedly called out. Shaolin nodded and leaped back. He showed a cold smile and said, "Third Severance King Tyr. Hee, in front of me, you are just a fart." King Tyr's could only be invincible among those at the same cultivation level. And he not only had the advantage of a minor level, but he had also tempered at the peak stage of the fourth severance, for who knew how many millions and millions of years. His battle prowess was completely on par with King Tyr's. Say, how could he not have a sense of superiority? Ling Han dragged that person and walked towards Shaolin like a dead dog. He did not speak. In his eyes, this person was only a mass of air, and there was no need to pay attention to him at all. Arrogant, Shaolin humphed coldly and raised his right hand, slapping towards Ling Han's face. You like to slap people, right? Then I'll let you have a taste of being slapped. Ling Han raised a hand and grabbed Shaolin's wrist. Shaolin's expression instantly froze. How is this possible? Bei Xianming was also dumbfounded. In his eyes, Shaolin's strength was enough to rival holy sons and holy daughters at the peak stage of the fourth severance. So how could his wrist have been grabbed by Ling Han? It was as if there was a huge disparity between their battle prowess. You also want to have fun, don't you? Ling Han said calmly. He raised Shaolin's hand and slapped it back at him. Shaolin hurriedly mustered his full strength to resist, but he was completely no match for Ling Han. A fiery pain immediately spread over his face, causing tears to flow out. First pain and second shame. He had been slapped in public, so how could he endure it? Ling Han swung his hands, and Shaolin and the other person were thrown into Bei Xianming's hands. Their limbs were spread wide, and they had long since fainted. Bei Xianming involuntarily took a step back, a cold expression on his face. Just like how Fu Gaoyan couldn't find any reinforcements here, he couldn't find any either. Although he was not the only holy son of the lunar sect that had entered this place, the relationship between holy sons was a competitive one. So how could they ask for help for their personal grievances? Firstly, he couldn't bring himself to do this, and secondly, he would only become a joke if he asked others. Thus, Fu Gaoyan could only resign himself to his fate just then. Now if it was him, he would also do the same. I admit defeat, he said through gritted teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. After saying this, he had his subordinates help Shaolin and the other person up. Even if they couldn't defeat him, couldn't they just hide? Ling Han humphed and said, You want to leave just like that? What do you want? Bei Xianming asked darkly. He also knew that he had to pay a price. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Just then, didn't you say that I had offended the Zai clan and should behave with my tail between my legs? Let me tell you something. Just a few days ago I killed Zai Bingyan. Wang. Bei Xianming felt his mind tremble, and a loud boom rang out. He almost fainted. Fake, it had to be fake. If he had only offended Zai Bingyan, then even if the Zai clan wanted to deal with Ling Han, they wouldn't dare to go to war. But if Zai Bingyan was killed, then the situation would be completely different. Who could humiliate a celestial king tier force? At that time, perhaps everyone here would have to die with him. Bei Xianming trembled and felt that Ling Han had to be a madman or a swindler, making such a meaningless joke. Why, you must be spouting nonsense. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, You really think too highly of yourself. How would I have the time or the mood to spout nonsense with you? Didn't you say that I was very bold? Then I'll let you experience it. He flicked a finger, and xiao, a flash of sword light swept out, piercing into the top of Bei Xianming's head, and then shooting out from the back of his head. Bei Xianming's legs instantly weakened, and he knelt onto the ground, his eyes rapidly losing their luster. Fu Gaoyan and the others were all numb with fear, and Fu Gaoyan also thought back to when Ling Han had asked him whether he could kill Bei Xianming. At that time, he had thought that it was only a joke, but looking at it now, killing intent had risen in Ling Han's heart. This was simply too audacious. Chapter 1840. Ling Han stayed in the gorge for a day, taking a short break. He had obtained a great many spoils of battle, and on this day, he was making an inventory. For example, he had the divine demon sword swallow godly metal. Aside from the large pile of pseudo-divine metal that he had obtained from Qianzhao Yang, he had also obtained a considerable amount from Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng. They were all inheritors of great sects, their wealth extremely shocking. He had the divine demon sword devour all of it, and this future celestial tool also advanced into the level of a 3-star pseudo-celestial tool. 3 out of 10 were gone, and he was almost a third done. Ling Han was very satisfied. The divine demon sword had once again surpassed him in terms of cultivation level. Now it could even match Yin Soul and Yang Soul tiers. Unfortunately, it was only in terms of toughness. Because his cultivation level had not reached that level yet, there was no way for him to brand higher regulations into the divine demon sword, causing the might of the divine demon sword to also be limited. It was fine as long as he could keep up with his realm. He had also refined the tree core of the white demon tree and cultivated a murderous aura. This murderous aura was based on the regulations of slaughter, and in terms of destructive power, it was even more powerful than the sharpness of metal. In fact, everyone had baneful aura, but it was often uncontrollable. However, once one cultivated the decimation law, one could actively use baneful aura. It was not only their own, but also that of others. The stronger the baleful aura, the stronger the battle prowess. This was a classic case of nurturing battle through battle. The more they fought, the crazier they would become. A day later, he decided to set off with the Empress. They would head towards the final volcanic region and explore the depths of this mystery realm. When they walked out, they saw that the canyon had suddenly become lively. As it turned out, bewitching Maiden Ro had arrived. This stunner from the Purity sect was extremely charming. Every step she took was graceful. It was unknown how many men's eyes were glued to her. Those who had strong willpower almost drooled. Bewitching Maiden Ro also discovered Ling Han and the Empress, and the corners of her lips involuntarily twitched. Of course, she drank the reincarnation tea. And because she was angry, she drank the whole bottle of tea in one breath. In the end, she regretted it half to death. That was definitely immortal tea. Although there was no comprehension of the rules in it, it could help her comprehend the Tao. Dreaming of eternity was extremely awesome. You bastard. Can't you just tell me when you're giving me something good? You made me waste half of it. I want to bite you, you bastard. Bewitching Maiden Ro looked at Ling Han and really wanted to pounce on him and bite him. But when she thought that Ling Han was embroiled in trouble, and if she pounced on him, she would probably also be covered in blood, she could only forcibly suppress the urge. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. He held the Empress's hand and left. The two of them walked side by side, but they had only taken a few steps when they suddenly heard a pung. The ground beneath their feet suddenly split open, and 3 figures shot out. There was a cold glint in their hands, and they slashed, and stabbed at Ling Han. At the same time, the boulders in the surroundings also suddenly changed. They all disappeared, and at least 10 figures leaped out, also launching attacks at Ling Han. Every angle was locked down from every direction. Ling Han was slightly surprised. It wasn't that he had been ambushed, but that these people had hidden themselves. He hadn't discovered their existence until they attacked. This kind of concealment technique was somewhat praiseworthy. Just as he was sighing in admiration, these attacks had already reached him. Bewitching Maiden Ro was shocked at first, and had the urge to lend a hand, but she immediately recalled how freakish Ling Han was, and dismissed this thought. She had seen with her own eyes that even Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng had not been able to do anything to Ling Han when they detonated their divine fetus. How could the combined forces of a dozen or so of them be able to match the might of the detonation of a divine fetus? Pung! The attacks of a dozen or so landed, and the light of regulation surged chaotically, forming a terrifying great explosion that surged endlessly. In the distance, everyone was stunned by this sudden attack, and then they all shook their heads. Being ambushed by so many people, and there were even a few king-tier elites among them, he was definitely dead. Who asked Ling Han to be so high-profile? When the light of regulation dispersed, They saw that Ling Han and the Empress were standing where they were as if nothing had happened. There wasn't the slightest bit of injury on their bodies. And there wasn't even the slightest sign of battle. This, impossible. One of the ambushers couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Even if you could block all of their attacks, it couldn't possibly be so easy. This was naturally because Ling Han had cast the banishing technique on himself and the Empress. With his present strength, the separate space was definitely not something that these trash could break. Ling Han looked at that person and said, "How would you trash know my level?" Pung! He shot out a punch, and that person exploded, turning into a rain of blood. When the other ambushers saw this, they all paled in shock and hurriedly turned to flee. There were a dozen or so of them, and he was only one person. At most, he would only be able to catch up to one or two of them. However, they were really too naive. The Empress humphed coldly. Shwa shwa, shwa. 10 battle beasts appeared, each roaring as they pounced on an ambusher. The battle beasts were terrifying, and in just a few moves, they had burned an ambusher into ashes. This was so frightening that the people in the surroundings almost wet their pants in fright. You couple were really too strong, weren't you? Ling Han also moved casually, and as lightning shot out, the remaining few ambushers were all killed. He clapped his hands, and with an incredibly casual expression, he took the Empress's hand and left, as if nothing had happened. The people in the surroundings looked at each other, all of them speechless. After a long while, there was a flurry of discussion, and they were amazed at the strength of Ling Han and the Empress. Of course, there were also some people who were talking about the Empress's exquisite beauty. Humph, no matter how freakishly talented he is, he killed Bei Xianming, and will be killed by the lunar sect as soon as he leaves the mystery realm. A person with thin eyelids said with envy and hatred. It's fine that you are fuck you strong, but you actually managed to hook up with such a beautiful woman? Is there still justice in this world? All the advantages in the world have been taken by you alone. That's right. Do you really think that you can just leave after killing the holy son of a 3-star sect? There was more than one person with thin eyelids. Hee. After we leave everyone, don't forget to report this to the lunar sect. There was no shortage of people who didn't like the excitement. A considerable number of people laughed. Ling Han's strength made it hard for them to breathe, so they naturally viewed him as a thorn in their side. For example, those Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng were also ridiculously powerful. They were the successors of celestial king tier forces, and were existences that they could only look up to. They couldn't even arouse jealousy in their hearts. But who the hell was Ling Han? He was only the vassal of a 3-star force, and yet he could surpass them. Holy sons and holy daughters pay. Xiao xiao xiao. It was at this moment that 3 figures descended. They were Lin Fang, Tung Sun and Wei Nian. Fairy Lin. Brother Tung. Brother Wei. Everyone hurriedly greeted them. These 3 were all holy sons and holy daughters, and their talent was even more outstanding. Otherwise, it was impossible that they had passed through the ascending dragon palace, and the others had not. Why have the 3 of you only arrived now? A holy son asked. Lin Fang pondered for a moment, and then said, "Isn't it because of Ling Han?" Ling Han again. Everyone was stunned. Chapter 1841. How is Ling Han? Those people asked curiously. Lin Fang glanced at bewitching Maiden Ro, and only then said, Ling Han did not just kill Bei Xianming. There was also Bei Yuxiong and Qian Zhaotian. She listed out names one after another. They were either the holy sons and holy daughters of 3-star sects, or the successors of 3-star clans. This. Not only were the others dumbfounded, but they also broke out in cold sweat. That guy was simply a star of misfortune. How many kings did he kill in a single breath? Fortunately, that guy didn't start a massacre just now. Everyone was puzzled. How was this fellow going to escape the encirclement of so many 3-star forces after leaving the mystery realm? Ling Han would definitely die. Why did he have to act so recklessly? Lin Fang withheld the news that Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng had been killed because she, Tung Sun, and the others wanted to personally report this news. Though they might incur the wrath of the great sects, They would also be able to form relations with two great celestial king tier forces. Because of this, everyone shook their heads. This time, Ling Han was definitely dead for sure. Otherwise, if it was just the lunar sect alone, the Fu clan could still just barely stand against it. However, with so many three-star forces attacking together, Ling Han was definitely dead for sure. Ling Han and the queen walked out of the canyon and entered an area that no one else could set foot in. Ling Han was fine, but the empress had to use the flame control technique. Otherwise, the raging fire element would instantly burn her to ashes. At this point, the nine heavens flame became restless, as if it wanted to fly out of Ling Han's dantian. Ling Han harumphed. It didn't matter what relationship the nine heavens flame had with the immortal king in the past. Now that it had become his source energy, it could only listen to him. Otherwise, he would rather give it up. What was the use of a power that didn't listen to his commands? Moreover, this power was still in his body. Once it went astray, it would cause great trouble. The nine heavens flame immediately became obedient, like a child being scolded by an adult. It even revealed a wronged expression. Ling Han was unmoved. When it came to his own strength, he had to be absolutely sure. Half a day later, they arrived at the foot of the volcano. Along the way, they'd obtained a large amount of blood dragon stones. Because no one had ever reached this step, it was obvious how great their harvest was. Who knew how many billions of years had passed, and blood dragon stones were practically everywhere. There was no need to search for them at all. They had a bountiful harvest, and behind them, bewitching Maiden Ro was also happily harvesting in the outer regions. She couldn't reach the depth of Ling Han and Li Xiandao, but she could go further than the others. Naturally, her gains were not small. Bewitching Maiden Ro watched as the figures of Ling Han and the other young man disappeared from her sight, and couldn't help but be filled with curiosity. What would these two people discover in that volcano? Then, when the mystery realm became violent again, how would they escape? Once the news spread, almost half of the factions would make a move against Ling Han. And there were even two Celestial King tier factions among them. Though the two of you were freakish, one was at the third severance, and the other was at the second severance. No matter how you thought about it, there was no possibility of survival. Ling Han and the Empress ascended the mountain. There was no path here, but the two of them used their hands and feet, so it was naturally not difficult for them to climb. Flying was not advisable here. There was a violent aura reverberating in the mountains, and if one touched it, it would definitely be a dead end. The eruption of the volcano had only suppressed the violent aura in this place, but there were still some scattered aura reverberating in the air, and touching it would be fatal. "Little Han, hey little Han!" An enthusiastic shout traveled over from behind. The large black dog was currently sprinting over. Even though he was only using his two legs, his speed was astonishingly fast, and it didn't take long for him to catch up. Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised and asked, "Why have you come over?" "Grandpa Dog is going to go on a long journey very soon, and thinking that I haven't said goodbye to you, especially rushed over." The large black dog put a hand on Ling Han's shoulder. Grandpa Dog is loyal, right?" Ling Han chuckled. How much trouble had this damn dog caused him? And so on. "You haven't cultivated the flame control technique, so how can you ignore the fire element here? Even the blood dragon armor didn't have such powerful defensive abilities. Even immortal palace tier elites don't dare to come here. And ascending origin tier elites don't even know. So how can a damn dog like you?" This. The large black dog scratched his head, suddenly looked up, and sighed ruefully. "The weather today is not bad. The moon is bright, and the sun is very bright. Fuck off." "Little Black, who exactly are you?" Ling Han couldn't help but ask. A freak like the large black dog had already surpassed the ability that a severing mundane tier should have. In the past, he had even bitten a fourth severance grand elder with his Genesis tier cultivation level. This was very unrealistic. At least, Ling Han had never heard of anyone that could be so freakish. The large black dog's eyes swiveled, and after a long while he said, "At this time, Grandpa Dog doesn't want to hide it from you anymore. In fact, I am your long-lost father." "Fuck off." Ling Han kicked him. He was actually trying to take advantage of him. The large black dog pondered for a moment, and finally said, "Fine, I'm going to leave soon. Even if I tell you, I won't let you think that you'll always want to rely on Grandpa Dog." He paused, and then proudly said, "I am a celestial king." Pooh! Ling Han instantly spluttered with laughter. This damn dog was a celestial king. What celestial king would act like this? He laughed loudly, and as he laughed, his laughter grew softer. Then he stared at the large black dog. This was because the large black dog's expression was extremely serious, and he didn't look like he was joking at all. If this were any other place, even if the large black dog had such an expression, Ling Han would think that he was pretending. However, the problem here was that even immortal palace tier elites couldn't enter, so the large black dog had to be at least at the ascending origin tier. Gasp! This damn dog said that he wanted to steal Celestial King Ling Miao's underwear. So he wasn't joking. This despicable dog. He really is a Celestial King. Ling Han emphasized. The large black dog sneered and said, "When I was dominating the world, how glorious was I? Countless female Celestial Kings fought to become my steeds, and I only chose a few of the most beautiful ones. They're slightly inferior to you, my wife." He glanced at the Empress. Ling Han solemnly asked, "Why are you helping me?" The large black dog pointed at Ling Han's dantian with a smile, and asked, "Didn't that guy tell you?" Small Tower Ling Han's heart trembled. Sure enough, the large black dog and Small Tower knew each other, and they were definitely good friends. He shook his head and said, "No." The large black dog scratched his head and said, "I was a supreme celestial king at the time, and I was either at the 8th or 9th heaven. However, for some reason, I was severely wounded and entered into a state of deep sleep to recover from my injuries. This dream lasted for eons. When I was reborn, my cultivation level had fallen to rock bottom, and I couldn't remember anything that had happened before I was wounded. It was only after I entered the celestial realm that I awakened a portion of my memories, and my cultivation level also returned to above the ascending origin tier, below the Celestial King tier. After all, the Celestial King tier is far too difficult to overcome." Hearing the large black dog say this, Ling Han felt like he was in a dream. Not only was this despicable dog a Celestial King, but it was also possible that he had reached the peak stage. If he wasn't at the 8th or 9th heaven, then he was at the pinnacle stage. "I still don't understand why you're helping me," Ling Han said again. Chapter 1842. The large black dog shook his head and said, "You're too weak now, so knowing too much won't do you any good. At first, Grandpa Dog wanted to guide you all the way to Celestial King tier. But as Grandpa Dog's strength increases, I'm afraid that a few old monsters will sense it. If I stay by your side, you'll be in too much danger." Ling Han was speechless. What kind of existence could make an 8th, or even 9th heaven celestial king call an old monster? It was definitely a 9th heaven celestial king. He thought back. Though the large black dog had repeatedly caused trouble for him, it could also be seen as a form of training for him. On the other hand, even if the large black dog didn't provoke someone, for example, Zai Bingyun, wouldn't there be conflict between Ling Han and her? For the heavenly Dao Jade, a battle was definitely unavoidable, and with Zai Bingyun's ruthlessness, the two of them would still have to fight to the death in the end. The large black dog only caused this conflict to erupt prematurely. Moreover, if elites really made a move, with the large black dog's strength, he could completely resolve it. Everything was just to train Ling Han. Of course, the large black dog was definitely not a good person. He had swindled people, and had even set his eyes on a certain celestial king's body. Not only would the large black dog do such immoral things, but only he would think of such things. Previously, the large black dog had already given him some advice on cultivation, especially on the 5th severance. This was a hurdle that he had to cross if he wanted to become a peak stage celestial king. If Ling Han carelessly crossed this hurdle, then it would be too late for regret. "What's the deal with this volcano?" Ling Han asked. The large black dog glanced at the top of the mountain, a rare expression of desolation on his face, and said, "An old friend is buried here. In the past, he failed to advance to the ninth heaven celestial king tier, and his remains were buried here. This was his own will, and he was willing to use countless years to erase his will, leaving behind pure essence, so that those who came after him could be reborn. Ling Han couldn't help but tremble, and he said, although the ninth heaven celestial king tier is a supreme peak stage, there's no need for an eighth heaven celestial king to give up his life for it, right? At the height of an eighth heaven celestial king, there really weren't many people in this world that were a match for him. Moreover, his lifespan was unlimited, so why was there a need to rush to advance to the ninth heaven? Perhaps after a few epochs, he would collect countless source powers of heaven and earth and celestial medicines, and his chances would be greater? Why fight to the death? Brat, you don't understand. The large black dog patted Ling Han's shoulder. On the surface, this world appears peaceful, but in reality, a terrifying killing intent is concealed beneath this tranquility. Grow up quickly, otherwise, everything will be destroyed when this dark storm blows. Ling Han knew that if he asked in detail, the large black dog would definitely not answer. Just like Small Tower, it would always avoid answering crucial questions. In other words, his strength was still too weak. He nodded slowly. Although he was curious about what this dark storm was, his priority now was to increase his strength. What relationship does this immortal king have with the nine heavens flame? Asked Ling Han. The large black dog chuckled and said, the source power of heaven and earth can evolve. For example, the heavenly Tao Jade that you obtained was born from the source power of heaven and earth, yet it is no longer the source power of heaven and earth. As for the nine heavens flame, it can also develop its own intelligence. From then on, it will no longer be a source of heaven and earth, but a living being. Ling Han was astonished, and he asked, you're saying that this immortal king was born from the nine heavens flame? No wonder the nine heavens flame had been so excited just then. That's right. The large black dog nodded and said, this immortal king is known as the heavenly fire celestial king, and he was skilled in manipulating fire. After he passed away, a wisp of his remnant flame remained unextinguished for billions of years, and a new nine heavens flame was born. Meanwhile, his corpse has been burning here for billions of years, and the murderous aura of the celestial king has already been melted away, leaving behind only his essence. I'll use this essence to refine you. I won't increase your cultivation level, but I'll only strengthen your foundation so that you can reach the pinnacle in the future. Others won't be able to use this kind of power? Ling Han asked. Of course. The large black dog replied proudly and said, the immortal king was born from the source power of heaven and earth. If it weren't for me, he would rather return his essence to heaven and earth. Ling Han became even more curious. From the large black dog's words, the heavenly fire celestial king had actually failed in his attempt to break through to the ninth heaven. However, he had voluntarily given up on life and used his essence to help those who came after him. Even Ling Han couldn't help but admire the heavenly fire celestial king's character. Come, brat. We've prepared for hundreds of millions of years, all for the sake of this day's glory, the large black dog said solemnly. With this celestial king's essence to refine you, you'll also have a better chance of advancing to the fifth severance. The nine heavens flame that had attained Tao had been refined for hundreds of millions of years, yet the essence it had left behind was only enough to give a better chance of advancing to the fifth severance? Wasn't the fifth severance far too difficult? Advancing to the fifth severance has always been extremely difficult. Moreover, your foundation is far too weak, and you haven't been strengthened by the resources of a top-notch celestial king tier level force. Although you've cultivated to perfection at every cultivation level since you came from a small world, your resources are far too important. The large black dog sighed with emotion and said, now, it's time for you to truly defy the heavens and change your fate. Ling Han was a little skeptical. He wasn't inferior to any prodigy. Weren't you, Zai Bingyan, and Luo Changfeng also descendants of celestial king tier level forces? Yet hadn't he still killed them? Moreover, his cultivation level was slightly lower than theirs. The large black dog couldn't help but scoff and say, Do you think I'm comparing you to that kind of trash? You're wrong. Those that can be taken seriously by Grandpa Dog have to at least be descendants that have been nurtured by 7th Heaven Celestial King tier level forces. If you encounter them, then you'll know how terrifying such prodigies are. In this kind of small place, Celestial King tier level forces are completely unable to nurture Celestial King descendants, but in true great sects, those that can be chosen to become holy sons and holy daughters will definitely be able to become Celestial Kings. The only difference is the number of heavens they will reach in the future. Hearing the large black dog say this, Ling Han's arrogance slowly faded, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. There are many such Celestial King tier level forces? Ling Han asked. It has always been the Western Celestial Realm that is stronger than the Eastern Celestial Realm. However, even in the Eastern Celestial Realm, there are also several 9th Heaven Celestial King tier level sections. It's just that you're so far away from them that you don't have the chance to meet a true prodigy, the large black dog said. It's not that I'm trying to discourage you, but if you were to be placed among the true Celestial King tier level descendants, you would at most rank in the lower middle. Ling Han was slightly unwilling to accept this, and he said, Don't forget, I still have 2 source powers of heaven and earth. It's precisely because you've already taken them into account that you can rank in the lower middle. Otherwise, The large black dog shook his head. Ling Han had indeed been dealt a blow, but his fighting spirit instantly ignited. He looked at the mountain peak and said, Then, what will happen after I defy the heavens and change my fate? You'll be in the middle or upper middle, the large black dog said with uncertainty. This was at most only in the upper middle. An expression of disbelief appeared on Ling Han's face. Was this damn dog purposefully trying to discourage him? Even if it was to stimulate his fighting spirit, there was no need to do this, right? If I told you that there was someone who continuously gave up 1,000 incarnations in order to cultivate the severing mundane tier to perfection, would you be so shocked that you wouldn't even be able to fart? The large black dog asked with a chuckle. Chapter 1844. Ling Han took a step forward and channeled his origin power. The power of regulations manifested, especially the 9 heavens flame, which surged fiercely. The large black dog formed another hand seal and pointed at the giant in the sky. The giant's chest lit up. A fist-sized rock flew out and was burning fiercely. This was his heart. It had originally been incredibly massive, but now it had been refined by him and had shrunk to the size of a fist. Xiao! The flaming heart flew toward the large black dog, as quick as lightning. If it were an immortal palace tier, it would definitely be pierced through in a single strike. But the large black dog had once been a celestial king, and even if his cultivation level had dropped, he still had some abilities that surpassed his cultivation level. Moreover, he clearly knew how to deal with all of this. Freeze! The large black dog stretched out a paw, and the flaming heart immediately stopped. Then, it slowly hovered above Ling Han's head. Close your eyes and calm your mind. Let go of everything, and use the flame control technique. Ling Han did as he was told, and sat down. The large black dog pointed again, and instantly, the flaming heart poured down like a waterfall. I'll give you a sliver of its essence to help you break through to the third severance. When this brat has finished defying the heavens and changing his fate, the rest of the benefits will be yours to absorb. The large black dog waved his paw, and a small dot immediately flew out from the flaming heart, drifting toward the Empress. This small dot hovered above the Empress's head and began to pour down like a waterfall of flames. The Empress also sat down and absorbed the benefits. She didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed, because in her eyes, everyone should do anything for her. So what need was there for her to be polite? Boom! A landslide and tsunami rose up in Ling Han's body. Every cell in his body became a world, and then was tempered by the power of flames, advancing in a higher direction. A miracle could be achieved through repeated tempering. It was just like how level 20 godly metal could never become divine metal, but could be continuously strengthened through layer upon layer, reaching the height of 10-star pseudo-divine metal. only a little bit away from true divine metal. It was the same for Ling Han. His body wasn't perfect enough, and this celestial king flame was helping him refine the impurities in his body, leaving only the most essential and strongest parts. Then, it would use its own celestial king essence to help Ling Han strengthen. Otherwise, Ling Han would definitely be incinerated if he just refined it without replenishing it. Even so, he could not help but let out a groan. This was really too painful. It was so deep into his consciousness that even knocking him unconscious was useless. He could still clearly feel it. This was a fundamental transformation. Ling Han wasn't a divine fetus, but what was a divine fetus? An ancestor of an immortal king, and then a segment of the immortal king's laws manifested on a certain descendant, and they became a divine fetus. They possessed powerful abilities, and were usually invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Now, an eighth heaven celestial king had perished, but he had refined his own divine body and extracted its essence to help Ling Han. However, this wasn't enough to completely improve Ling Han's foundation. One must know that the heavenly fire immortal king was qualified to attempt the 9th layer back then. Even though he did not succeed, it was undeniable that he was extremely powerful. Furthermore, he was a 9 heavens flame that was nurtured by the source energy of the heavens and earth. As such, how precious would such a gift be? Ling Han's body was developing in the direction of becoming a divine fetus. However, there would still be a vast gap between divine fetus. A fragment of regulations left behind by a first heaven celestial king could compare to an 8th heaven celestial king. Moreover, it was a gift from such a powerful 8th heaven celestial king. Moreover, it was a gift that he had obtained after refining his own divine body. Ling Han forcefully endured the pain and channeled the flame control technique, guiding the flames to transform his body. At the same time, he also channeled the indestructible heaven scroll to protect his weakened divine sense. Otherwise, he would definitely collapse under the scorching flames. Old friend, you can finally rest in peace. The large black dog removed his laughable blood dragon armor. He had only intended to deceive others, but he no longer needed it now. Of course, he was still unwilling to remove his iron underwear. Otherwise, he would not be as graceful as Lord Dog. A smile appeared on the giant's face, and he nodded. Then his body suddenly crumbled. Pung! He transformed into countless bursts of flames that surged in all directions. Under the suppression of such scorching flames, all of the violent auras in the hidden dragon mystery realm completely disappeared. A mere first heaven celestial king was nothing more than trash before an 8th heaven celestial king. Thus, the auras that they had left behind were naturally also easily erased. 10 days later, the Empress let out a long cry. Under the boost of her celestial king tier power, she had already pushed open the door to the 3rd severance. She began to transcend her tribulation. Amidst the devastating lightning, she slashed out a 3rd saber toward heaven and earth, enraging heaven and earth. However, the heavenly Tao also had its own regulations, so it quickly calmed down and disappeared. The Empress didn't even have time to say anything before the large black dog pointed a finger at the heart of the flames. He channeled a portion of his power into the Empress, forcing her to sit down again and accept the transformation of the celestial flames. She was a divine fetus in the first place, so the transformation this time wasn't to give her a divine fetus of flames. Instead, it was to improve on her original foundation, making her divine fetus even more powerful. The large black dog clasped his hands behind his back, and his expression became unusually serious for the first time. 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 What we lack the most is always time. If the tide of darkness surges over, will this brat be able to mature in time? He murmured. Those old monsters don't have any ambition, and they don't want to suppress the darkness. All they do is stir up trouble and infighting among themselves. We definitely can't allow them to discover the existence of this brat. Otherwise, our plan of hundreds of millions of years will go up in smoke. Brat, you mustn't die. Although your future path is destined to be incredibly difficult, and you can only walk it alone with the entire world as your enemy, only you will be able to walk to the end. Because you are the only hope left behind by the heavenly venerate. Ling Han couldn't hear these words. At this moment, all of his attention was focused on battling with the power of flames. He was guiding the power of flames into his body, causing them to unleash their intended effects. However, this kind of transformation and improvement was incredibly slow. Thinking about it, Gu Daoyi had only managed to become a divine fetus after 10 lifetimes. Although the might of a celestial king was being displayed now, it still couldn't be accomplished in a single step. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It was almost the 10th year since Ling Han had entered this place, and the blazing heart finally began to dim. This was happening very quickly. It had just begun to dim, and after a mere 3 days, it had completely stopped shining. A gust of wind blew past, and the blazing heart was also reduced to ashes. Everything that had once belonged to the heavenly fire celestial king had disappeared. It was just like how he had originally been nurtured by heaven and earth. And now, he had also completely returned to heaven and earth. Ling Han and the Empress simultaneously opened their eyes before standing up. The peak stage of the third severance, although the essence of a celestial king, was mainly used to transform and improve their bodies. Even a shred of it could be used to increase their cultivation level. This was also an astonishing result, allowing them to easily reach the peak stage of the third severance. However, if they wanted to unleash the fourth severance, even Celestial King tier techniques couldn't replace it. They could only rely on their own comprehension. This was also why the large black dog wanted the Empress to advance to the third severance first. Otherwise, he would have wasted this essence for nothing. Brat, behave yourself in the future, and don't cause too much trouble. Otherwise, Grandpa Dog will be ashamed to be associated with you. The large black dog waved his paw and said, "All right, I've already completed my mission. Now it's time to fulfill my wish from many years ago." He took a step forward, and it was as if he were flying. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1845. The large black dog left, looking incredibly carefree. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh as he watched him disappear. This large black dog had reappeared, and who knew how many people would die at his hands. He would mourn for these people for now. He exchanged a smile with the Empress, and then also set off. "My divine fetus has become even more powerful," the Empress said. After being tempered by the Celestial King tear flames, her divine fetus had improved further. Although she could still only form 9 doppelgangers, the battle prowess of each doppelganger was many times stronger than before. Moreover, although she hadn't transformed into a physique of fire, she had still obtained benefits related to the regulations of fire. Her physique had become intimate with fire, and the fire origin of heaven and earth was at her fingertips. The strength of celestials lay in the use of regulations, directly using the great Tao to crush their opponents. Thus, no matter how many Genesis tier stars they had, they could only be crushed by severing mundane tiers. Regulations were superior to power. However, regulations also needed to be used, and there was a process of forming battle prowess. The closer one was to the great Tao, the faster they would be able to use regulations. It was possible that 2 people might be at the same cultivation level, but if one side used regulations faster, they might be able to insta-kill the other. Thus, when the large black dog said that Ling Han could only be ranked below average among true prodigies, he wasn't deliberately trying to discourage Ling Han. Now, the Empress could use regulations of fire with incredible ease and speed. She was faster than those at the same cultivation level, and the power she used was greater. "What about you?" the Empress asked. Ling Han smiled. Boom! Bursts of flame soared from his body, and his body actually completely turned into flames. "I've formed a fire divine fetus. Apart from being more intimate with regulations of fire, I can also merge with the great Tao of fire and temporarily borrow battle prowess." Generally speaking, divine fetuses were all like this. Firstly, they were intimate with regulations, and secondly, they could use regulations that surpassed their cultivation level. However, this definitely couldn't last for long, and sometimes they would have to pay a huge price. The Empress was very curious and asked, "What level can your strongest strike reach now?" Ling Han thought for a moment and said, Even if Zai Bingyan and Luo Changfeng come back to life, I can kill them with a single strike. Of course, this was the battle prowess that he borrowed after merging with the great Tao of Fire. The Empress smiled sweetly. The stronger Ling Han was, the happier she would naturally be. At this moment, Ling Han also completely understood that the large black dog had indeed not deceived him. There were super prodigies who were far more powerful than him in the celestial realm. Putting everything else aside, just the closeness to the laws alone was enough to widen the gap between the two's combat strength by an unknown amount. The foundation of a 7th, 8th, or 9th heaven celestial king was extremely shocking. After countless epics and countless treasures, it was completely capable of creating the strongest genius in the world. Then let's have a match. Ling Han was full of heroism. Ever since he had started from the small world, he had trampled over countless geniuses. There would be no exception in the future. The Empress was also brimming with confidence. She was a divine fetus in the first place, and now that she had received a massive boost, she wouldn't lose to a true supreme prodigy. Now that there was no more mountain to descend, they returned to the canyon and saw that the people here had all been evacuated. It was empty. Although the baleful aura was gone, everyone didn't know what was going on. They felt that the 10-year period was almost up, so they began to evacuate. Who would dare to risk their lives? Ling Han and the Empress didn't linger, and they continued to head out of the mystery realm. They were extremely fast, and after a few days, they had caught up with the last group of people that had left. Then they caught up with the second group, and then the third group. When they walked out of the mystery realm, they were almost ahead of half of the people that had left. At this moment, there was a commotion outside the mystery realm. Some people were happy, and there were naturally people who were worried. Those who were happy were naturally, because their clansmen had walked out of the mystery realm with blood dragon stones. Those who were worried were naturally, because their clansmen hadn't come out yet, and they were worried that they had died in there. Something big has happened, someone immediately shouted. A supreme villain has appeared in the mystery realm this time, and he has killed many holy sons and holy daughters. That's right. Qianzhao Tian, Bei Xianming, Bei Yuxiong, and the others have all been killed by that villain. That villain is called Ling Han. Very quickly, Ling Han's great name spread throughout the mystery realm, and all of the forces learned of his deeds. For example, the Qianzhao clan and the Lunar sect. Although they didn't really believe that their successors and holy sons had been killed by Ling Han, they gradually believed it when they heard everyone say the same thing. Moreover, Ling Han hadn't come out yet. In the instant that Ling Han and the Empress walked out of the mystery realm, a terrifying pressure instantly swept over them. At least 100 elites appeared, blocking their path. Did you kill Qianzhao Yang? Did you kill Bei Yuxiong? Did you kill him? These were all dividing soul tier elites, and they all radiated a murderous aura at this moment. Even severing mundane tier grand elders would tremble with pressure. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "That should be the case. I don't have so much time and effort to remember the names of trash. Why, you're too arrogant." These dividing soul tier elites were all enraged. A mere peak stage third severance actually dared to act so impudently before them? Which one of them couldn't kill Ling Han 100 times with a casual wave of their hand? "Ignorant junior, since you've admitted it, then you can go die," said one of the dividing soul realm experts from the Qianzhao family. His name was Qianzhao Yu, and in a 3-star power, the dividing soul realm was an absolute powerhouse. He was extremely enraged. Ling Han had actually dared to kill the successor of the Qianzhao clan. This was a provocation to the Qianzhao clan. A mere third severance. How did he dare to do this? He still didn't know that Qianzhao Yang had also died at Ling Han's hands. Otherwise, he would definitely have exploded with rage. It wasn't easy to nurture a successor who knew how much time and resources it would take. Now that he had killed 2 of them, it was a huge blow to the Qianzhao clan. "Let me do it," an elite from the Beiyu clan said. He was also seething with rage. "Let me do it," another person shouted. All of them were fighting to kill Ling Han. "Wait, Chua." A figure flew over, exuding a supreme aura that could suppress the heavens. Even the dividing soul tier elites couldn't help but retreat. Immortal Palace tier. Lord Fu Yan. The dividing soul tier elites all bowed respectfully when they heard this person. Immortal Palace tier elites could be regarded as elites no matter where they were. In fact, they would be highly valued even in Celestial King tier forces. This Immortal Palace tier elite was none other than Fu Yan. He had come here under Fu Xinbing's instructions to ensure Ling Han's safety. Of course, the elites of the Rock Palace had also come here, and they would definitely be able to ensure Ling Han's safety. However, he had stepped forward first, so he naturally wanted to curry favor with the Rock Palace. How could a Celestial King tier force not be awesome? Fu Yan was incredibly dignified. Although he had come here to curry favor, he still felt an immense sense of superiority in front of these dividing soul tier elites. He raised his hand slightly, indicating that they could dispense with the formalities. He was putting on an imposing manner. May I ask why Lord Fu Yan has stopped us? The dividing soul tier elites asked. Although they were inferior to Fu Yan, the forces behind them weren't inferior to the Fu clan. Thus, there was no need for them to cower. Moreover, the battleship was floating in the sky, so it could definitely be used as an Immortal Palace tier elite. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1846. Fu Yan sighed in his mind. To be honest, he naturally didn't want to become enemies with so many 3-star forces. The Fu clan wasn't some top-tier 3-star force. Putting aside everything else, just the lunar sect alone was enough to beat them to a pulp. However, in order to curry favor with the Rock Palace, he definitely couldn't reveal this tiger skin. Otherwise, it would be far too insincere. The more difficult it was for him to protect Ling Han, the more it would demonstrate the Fu clan's determination, right? Fu Yan naturally didn't know that the Zai clan and the Thundercloud Palace hadn't received the news yet. Otherwise, he would definitely be screaming that he had been fucked over. If he didn't become enemies with 2 Celestial King tier forces, what was he? Unfortunately, he didn't know. Thus, he was completely focused on protecting Ling Han's safety and sucking up to the Rock Palace. He clasped his hands behind his back, a dignified expression on his face, and calmly said, "Listen to my advice. Don't touch a single hair on this brat's head." What? The dividing soul tier elites were all stunned, and some even doubted their own ears. That's right, you Fu Yan are indeed incredibly powerful here. However, more importantly, the Fu clan isn't an overlord that can suppress the entire world. Not only is it a 3-star force, but it's also below average. Where did your courage come from? If we join forces, I guarantee that the Fu clan will instantly be annihilated. To say nothing of anything else, would you be able to block the combined attack of their battleships? Even Ling Han and the Empress were slightly astonished. Hadn't they drawn a clear line between themselves and Fu Gaoyan? Why would Fu Yan step forward to protect them now? Moreover, it seemed like he was willing to pay any price. Have you taken the wrong medicine? However, although Ling Han had initially planned to shake them off by entering the Black Tower, since Fu Yan had stepped forward, he would have to deal with the situation first. Lord Fu Yan, are you sure you want to do this? Qianzhao Yu asked, a cold expression on his face. He was indeed weaker than the Fu clan, but the Qianzhao clan wasn't weaker than the Fu clan in the slightest. There was no need for him to lower his head. Moreover, there were many victims here, and the Fu clan had incurred the wrath of the masses. Even ants could bite an elephant to death, let alone a pack of tigers. The Fu clan definitely couldn't withstand a single blow. Fu Yan's expression darkened, and he said, "Are you threatening me?" Although he was under immense pressure, how could an Immortal Palace tier elite be challenged by just anyone? Regardless of whether I did the right thing or not, since you're only at the Soul Realm, you can only be submissive in front of me. Lord Fu Yan, do you know what this brat has done? The elite of the lunar sect asked coldly. His name was Zhao Lingfeng. Fu Yan's heart jolted. It must be known that these people did not come from a single power. Rather, they came from at least several dozen powers. What the hell did this kid do? In his heart, he wished he could slap Ling Han a few times, but his face remained expressionless as he said, "I really didn't know. This brat killed my sex saint child," shouted Zhao Lingfeng. Fu Yan felt as if his heart had been struck by a heavy blow. If it weren't for his astonishing willpower, his expression would have definitely changed, and he would have cried out in alarm. You're too much of a troublemaker. The lunar sect was one of the top 3 major forces in this area. If they really mobilized their full strength, they would definitely be able to destroy the Fu clan. Yet you actually killed their holy son? This, how audacious! And the heirs of our clan. Qianzhao Yu said in a sinister voice. He had also just received news that not only had Qianzhao Tian been killed by Ling Han, but even Qianzhao Yang had also been killed. This was a complete provocation to the Qianzhao clan. Thus, regardless of who stepped forward, Qianzhao Yu wouldn't back down. After all, he was representing the Qianzhao clan, a 3-star force. No matter how strong Fu Yan's willpower was, he couldn't help but grimace upon hearing this. Fine, not only had he offended the lunar sect, but he had also offended the Qianzhao clan as well. Moreover, he had even killed 2 of their heirs. Were you trying to end their bloodline? And the holy son of our sect? And the heir of our clan? And the dividing soul tier elites all spoke up, denouncing Ling Han's crimes. Fuck. These were the only words that lingered in Fu Yan's mind at this moment. He finally recalled that Ling Han had dared to wage war against the Ding clan and the Xiao clan when he had still been extremely weak. In fact, he had even destroyed the physical body of a prodigy of the Han clan. He had completely offended the Ding clan and the Xiao clan. This person was extremely audacious, and he definitely had a criminal record. His ability to cause trouble was simply unimaginable. Grand Ancestor. Oh, Grand Ancestor. Aren't you pushing me into a pit of fire by asking me to protect this brat? How can I withstand your attacks with my tiny arms and legs? Fu Yan was already numb as he listened on. He was confident that there was nothing else that could move him. No matter what this brat has done, no one is allowed to touch him. Fu Yan said through gritted teeth. He was also slightly expectant in his heart. After all, this was the only way he could display the value of the Fu clan. I've taken so many risks, so your rock palace should at least accept this, right? A female rider in the distance asked respectfully. My lord, are we not going to act? The female rider of the rock palace waved her hand and said, let these clowns perform for a while longer. In any case, we've already found the person, so there's no need to rush. Understood. Who knew what expression would appear on Fu Yan's face if he heard this? He had worked so hard, yet he had been treated like a clown. However, this was understandable. After all, did a mighty celestial king tier force need people like them to act as pawns? Moreover, how could the Rock Palace be an ordinary celestial king tier force? In their eyes, celestial kings below the 5th heaven were nothing to them. Thus, what was the point of the Fu clan's efforts? One could only say that the Fu clan's flattery had gone completely awry this time. The disparity in status was far too great. It was like a village chief trying to flatter the emperor. But would the emperor care? Upon hearing Fu Yan's words, the elites of the lunar sect and the others all exploded with fury. Are you fucking insane? If the Fu clan was a 4-star force, then they would have accepted it. However, they were all 3-star forces, and the Fu clan was only at the lower end of the rankings. Yet they still dared to act so arrogantly? Is your Fu clan trying to ascend to the heavens? Lord Fu Yan, you have to understand that we represent 37 forces here. Which one of us is weaker than the Fu clan? An elite of the Beiyu clan couldn't help but remind Fu Yan. His words were naturally filled with threat. Fu Yan had already made up his mind, so he naturally wouldn't mind. Instead he smiled and said, you juniors, I'm actually doing this for your own good. Don't make a mistake. Upon hearing this, the elites couldn't help but erupt in fury. They were all cursing the old turtle in their minds. You killed our heir, and you didn't allow us to avenge him? Yet, you still say that you're doing this for our own good? Good your sister. Do you take us for fools? Now that Lord Fu is backing us, we naturally don't dare to do anything. However, can the Fu clan withstand the fury of so many forces? Zhao Lingfeng said in a menacing voice. To say nothing of the other forces, just the lunar sect alone would be enough to destroy the Fu clan. Fu Yan waved his sleeve and said, what do you have? Our Fu clan will accept it. These words were said in a heroic and domineering manner. Oh, can you accept it? A cold voice asked. A figure descended from the sky, radiating with an aura that wasn't any weaker than Fu Yan's. In fact, it was even significantly stronger. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1848. Ling Han was already about to bring the Empress into the Black Tower. Against two immortal palace tier elites, he couldn't afford to have any hope of survival. Even if he channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, the only result would be that his physical body would immediately explode. Rising from the ashes wasn't a joke, and he would be injured every time he used it. Who's coming this time? He was also extremely confused. One had to realize that he didn't have any foundation in the celestial realm. He was like a poor child without parents, and he could only constantly strive to improve himself. Sun Jun and Zaiji were astonished. The other party hadn't even arrived, yet he had already blocked them with the power of regulations. How powerful was this person? Please show yourself, Sun Jun said as he looked into the distance. A dragon hawk flapped its wings and flew over in an instant. It was 100 feet long, and if it spread its wings, it would be 100 feet wide. On the back of the dragon hawk sat a female knight. She was dressed in golden armor, and had a head full of beautiful hair. She looked very heroic. There was also a group of dragon hawks behind her, and there was a female knight sitting on each dragon hawk. However, they were all dressed in silver armor. Scram! The female knight in golden armor reprimanded coldly. You've gone too far. Zaiji was also extremely displeased. Who was he? He was from a celestial king tier force, and yet he dared to speak to him like this? The female knight in golden armor glanced at him. Pa! She flicked her hand, and a whip appeared in her hand. She glared at Zaiji, looking as if she would whip him if he dared to interrupt again. Zaiji couldn't help but tremble with rage. Ever since he was young, when had he ever been looked down upon like this? Fine, fine, fine. Come, I want to experience your power. Pa! Zaiji hadn't even finished speaking when the female knight lashed out with her whip. This scene was far too terrifying. As the whip lashed out, countless immortal beasts appeared. However, they had all died in battle, and their bodies were riddled with wounds. This whip caused the entire heaven and earth to tremble, and it was as if the stars in the sky were about to fall. Zaiji didn't even have time to be astonished, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. Pa! The whip lashed out, and his entire body slid back several thousand meters. The clothes on his arms were torn to shreds, and a long gash appeared on his arms, from which blood gushed out. He was an immortal palace tier elite, yet he had been wounded with a single strike. Sun Jun couldn't help but feel astonished. It should be known that Zaiji and him were both 5th secret elites, and coming from a celestial king tier force, which of them would have simple battle prowess? However, Zaiji had been lightly wounded with a single strike, and this was enough to show the gap in power between the two of them. How should I address you? Asked Sun Jun. The female knight frowned and pointed at Ling Han. I'm taking this person away. Anyone who tries to stop me will be killed. So domineering. Fu Yan's heart thumped wildly. Weren't they all from Celestial King tier forces? Why was this person from the Rock Palace so powerful? Could it be that there was a huge disparity between Celestial King tier forces? Did he do something wrong? He should have followed through. Ling Han was also very curious. He did not recognize this female knight at all. So why would she be willing to stand up for him, and not hesitate to offend two great Celestial King tier forces? Sir, this brat killed the heir of my Zai clan, as well as the holy son of the Thundercloud Palace. How could he possibly get away so easily? Zaiji said in a menacing voice. He knew that the female knight's battle prowess was superior to his, but they still had a 4-star battleship. Was this something that an immortal palace tier cultivator could oppose? The female knight looked at Zaiji coldly, her killing intent boiling. However, she still resisted the urge to attack in the end, and said, If you have any problems, you can come to my rock palace. No matter who you are, my rock palace will accept your challenge. Now all of you scram. Rock palace. Ling Han's mind instantly trembled. No wonder she was willing to stand up for him despite not knowing him. So it turned out that she was a member of the Rock Palace. "Where's Hunyo? Is she here?" he hurriedly asked. A displeased expression spread across the female knight's face, and she said, "The young imperial empress title is Tianyan." Ling Han chuckled and said, "Hunyo is not here?" The female knight's nose almost became crooked. "Is there something wrong with your brain? I already told you that the young imperial empress title is Tianyan. So why did you still mention Hunyo? What a country bumpkin name." If she could, she really wanted to kill this person who had insulted the young imperial empress. However, when she thought of how much Hunyo missed Ling Han, she only dared to think about it. "The young imperial empress still needs to cultivate, so she can't come," she said through gritted teeth. She forcefully suppressed her anger. Meanwhile, Zaiji and Sun Zhen were confused. What the hell was this rock palace? The celestial realm was far too vast. Putting aside the fact that they were separated by a boundless sea, even if they were on the same continent, it would be completely impossible for them to find out if they were slightly further away. Perhaps the Purple River Celestial King and the Thundercloud Celestial King knew, but they might not necessarily tell their subordinates everything. Normally speaking, it was impossible for them to have any dealings with the Rock Palace. "So what if you're from the Rock Palace?" Zaiji asked in displeasure. Could the Zai clan allow an heir to die for no reason? The female knight had already been suppressing her anger in the first place, and Zaiji's words just so happened to be a direct provocation. "You're courting death," she rebuked coldly. Shua! Another whip lashed out. This time, Zaiji was prepared, and he hurriedly unleashed a celestial technique. A boundless aura surged out from his head and soared into the galaxy, transforming into a roaring white tiger. Then, it spat out a massive golden sword that slashed at the female knight. Pa! The whip lashed out, and its might had increased explosively by 100-fold compared to before. Zaiji was instantly horrified, yet he was completely unable to dodge. As the whip lashed out, starting from his head, his entire body was forcefully split into two halves. He still wanted to unleash a celestial technique to reassemble his body, yet a devastating destructive power swept over him. Pa! The two halves of his body exploded again, instantly turning into innumerable pieces. He was a mighty immortal palace tier elite, and a fifth secret elite at that, yet his body and spirit had been destroyed with a single strike. Gasp! Instantly, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. They felt a chill run down their spines, and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. He was far too powerful, far too domineering. She had killed a fifth secret elite without any hesitation, and she had completely disregarded the fact that he was from a celestial king tier clan. This rendered everyone speechless. Sun Jin couldn't help but stumble back a few steps. Even his legs were trembling slightly, just like Fu Yan just then. Meanwhile, Fu Yan's mouth was wide open, and he was completely speechless. Back then, she had killed Han Luo without any hesitation. After all, he was only an immortal palace tier elite from a 3-star force. However, Zaiji was a member of a celestial king tier force, and she had also killed him without any hesitation? Was she extremely daring, or was she extremely confident? What kind of existence was the Rock Palace among celestial king tier forces? The female knight looked at Sun Jin coldly. Although she was standing, she was completely arrogant. It was as if she would kill him if he dared to utter another word. What could Sun Jin say? He obediently kept his mouth shut. He didn't want to die at all. However, he had already made a decision in his mind. When he returned to the battleship, he would definitely gather the cannons and blast this arrogant woman to death. The surroundings were deathly silent. This female knight was far too domineering, and even the immortal palace tier elites from celestial king tier forces couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Lin Feng, Tung Sun, and Wang Yin's faces had all turned green. Ling Han actually had such a terrifying background. Fuck. You're clearly the heir of a celestial king tier force. So what are you pretending for? We're doomed now. Chapter 1849. Ling Han indeed hadn't planned to spare Lin Feng and the others. It was just that they had escaped quickly. Come, come, come. Let's have a battle. I'll spare whoever can block 3 strikes from me. Ling Han strode toward Lin Fang and the others. Lin Fang and the others wanted to run, but the 9 silver-armored female knights surrounded them on their steeds. The 3 of them could only look pleadingly at the elites of their clans. However, these elites all turned their heads away, pretending that they hadn't seen them. What a joke! Even Zai Ji had been insta-killed. They didn't want to die. Lin Fang and the others gritted their teeth and said, "Let's do it." They knew that they were definitely no match for Ling Han. However, blocking 3 strikes from him shouldn't be a problem. Come at me together. I'm in a hurry, Ling Han said calmly. Ling Han said calmly, 3 moves. As long as you can endure 3 moves, I'll treat you as heir and let you go. The 3 of them were naturally filled with confidence upon hearing this. Could it be that they couldn't block 3 strikes from Ling Han, even if they teamed up? Did he really think that he was a god? The female knight in golden armor was quite interested. She clasped her hands behind her back and didn't urge Ling Han to leave. She naturally knew that the young empress was extremely infatuated with this man. The question was Ling Han worthy of the young empress? Thus, she wanted to know just how powerful Ling Han was. If he really was trash, she would rather be punished by the sect and be reduced to dust than be able to kill Ling Han, so that he wouldn't harm the young empress. Lin Fang and the others smirked coldly in their minds upon seeing that Ling Han didn't take the initiative to attack. They exchanged a glance and weren't in a hurry to attack. Instead, they activated their most powerful techniques. Boom, boom, boom. The radiance of the great Tao surged from their bodies. As king tiers, their battle prowess naturally wasn't weak. In particular, they had already reached the peak stage of the 4th severance. They were practically invincible in the severing mundane tier. The 3 of them teamed up, and they only needed to block 3 strikes from Ling Han. They didn't believe that they couldn't do so. Since the female knight didn't say anything, the others naturally didn't dare to say or do anything. Even if some of them wanted to flatter her, they could only do so for now. At this time, Fu Gaoyan and the others had just come out of the secret realm, so they still didn't know what was going on. When they saw that Ling Han was going to fight again, they couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. It was very strange. The elites of the lunar sect and the other great elites were clearly on the sidelines. So why didn't they make a move to capture Ling Han? Instead, they allowed him to battle Lin Fang and the others. And why is forefather Fu Yin here too? They hurriedly ran over, curious, and hurriedly asked. Then they were all dumbfounded. Fuck. Ling Han was actually the heir of a celestial king tier force? Fu Gaoyan's face was filled with bitterness. If he could withstand the pressure, this friendship would bring him endless benefits. However, at least he still maintained a certain level of friendship with Ling Han, which was a blessing in disguise. Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyan was dejected. No wonder the empress had said that she was not worthy of Ling Han. At first, she had still boasted that her status was noble, but now compared to Ling Han, she was actually the one who knew how far behind. Meanwhile, Cheng Zhong and the others were filled with regret. They had once had such a powerful thigh placed right in front of them, yet they hadn't hugged it. If they could do it all over again, they would want to say, "Please let me hug it tightly. Has this guy really not had his asshole penetrated? Otherwise, why hasn't his hair grown back yet?" Situ Xiaojin was still conflicted over this question. It was unknown what was going on in her brain. Ling Han suddenly felt his ass clench, causing him to feel a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but shiver. Die! Lin Fang and the other 2 moved at the same time, each unleashing a powerful move that blasted towards Ling Han. Since they had taken the initiative to attack, their chances of surviving 3 attacks would naturally be higher. It was better to attack than to defend. They had to take the initiative. Of course, they definitely didn't dare to kill Ling Han. They didn't even dare to severely wound him. The female knight in golden armors might had already struck fear into their hearts. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and a terrifying aura burst forth from his body. The expressions of the dividing soul tier elites all changed, and expressions of astonishment appeared on their faces. This aura was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't at the dividing soul tier, It had far surpassed the peak stage of the fourth severance. Most importantly, Ling Han's cultivation level was only at the peak stage of the third severance. How could he unleash such a powerful attack? Even Sun Jin felt a chill run down his spine. He had initially thought that Ling Han had used some despicable method to kill Luo Changfeng. However, judging from the current situation, it seemed like Ling Han didn't even need to launch a sneak attack. The female knight in golden armor was also slightly astonished. Although Ling Han's strength was still inferior to Hunyo's, the Rock Palace was a ninth heaven celestial king tier force. Just how astonishing was their foundation? They had used the power of an entire sect to nurture Hunyo. Meanwhile, Ling Han was like a rootless duckweed. He could only rely on himself for everything. However, he was only slightly inferior to Hunyo. This was truly astounding to her. No wonder the young imperial empress missed him so much. An outstanding talent. Although he still couldn't compare to the young imperial empress, at least he wouldn't be too difficult. Boom! Lin Feng and the others charged over. Their auras were so powerful that they could annihilate heaven and earth. Ling Han shook his head. He activated his fire divine fetus and fused it with the regulations of fire. Then, he unleashed a strike that far surpassed his cultivation level. Boom! A dazzling burst of flames surged, creating a massive explosion. The power of regulations of fire surged, and the elites all moved to block the overflowing attack. Otherwise, it would affect the juniors of their own clans. The power of this strike was definitely at the pinnacle of the severing mundane tier. Meanwhile, the seniors of the Lin clan, Tung clan, and Wei clan wore bitter expressions on their faces. Under this kind of strike, it was questionable whether Lin Feng and the others would even have a piece of flesh left, let alone survive. Sure enough, when the flames disappeared, Lin Feng and the others also disappeared forever. Even with Ling Han's normal battle prowess, he would be able to quickly deal with them. Moreover, he had unleashed his divine fetus ultimate strike. Even he was panting slightly. If he still couldn't insta-kill them, then it would be a complete waste of an eighth heaven celestial king's millions and millions of years of effort. Ling Han clapped his hands and turned around. He then smiled at the female knight in golden armor and said, "Senior, can we depart now?" If he had to cross the boundless sea by himself, it would be extremely dangerous. However, since the female knight in golden armor had crossed the sea, she was naturally very confident. If he followed her to the western celestial realm, he would be absolutely safe. He didn't want to suddenly die just when he was about to see his wife, children, and mother. The female knight in golden armor pondered for a moment before saying, "All right." She swept her gaze over the crowd, and everyone lowered their gazes. They didn't dare to meet her gaze. Even Sun Jun was no exception. She was also a fifth secret cultivator, yet her battle prowess was far superior to his. They couldn't compare at all. Right now, he only had one thought in his mind, and that was to return to the battleship as soon as possible. Then he would fire his cannons and kill this woman. "Humph! You're plotting against us. You deserve to die." The female knight in golden armor's eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent as she swatted a palm toward Sun Jin. Sun Jin was both shocked and enraged. "I only have some fucking thoughts right now, and I haven't even put them into action yet. How can you attack me like this?" However, the palm had already reached him, and he had to react. Otherwise, he would just be waiting for death. He didn't dare to parry, and could only retreat as he said, "Please don't misunderstand." Chapter 1850. The female knight in golden armor didn't care about Sun Jin at all. She continued to attack with her palm, clearly intending to kill Sun Jin. Sun Jin roared in fury, yet he didn't dare to exchange blows with the female knight in golden armor. He hurriedly turned tail and fled. He wanted to return to the battleship. At that time, he would be able to take back the initiative. Lightning revolved around his body, making him look like a god. However, he fled without a trace. In the face of his life, he had to put his dignity aside. Moreover, fighting meant certain death. That was courage, not true bravery. Not only did the regulations of lightning possess terrifying destructive power, but they were also extremely fast. Sun Jun soared into the sky at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in the air above his battleship. An expression of joy involuntarily appeared on his face. It was time for him to counterattack. Pa! Right at this moment, he suddenly felt something tighten around his ankle. Then a powerful force pulled him down rapidly. There was a whip wrapped around his ankle. Whoosh! His body plummeted at an astonishing speed. No, he roared in his mind. However, he was completely unable to resist this power. Pung! He crashed heavily into the ground, creating a massive crater. Sun Jun staggered out of the crater. He hadn't suffered a heavy fall, but the female knight in golden armor had unleashed her power of regulations. As such, his legs were extremely weak. Lady, I'm still a member of a Celestial King tier force. If you kill me, it'll only bring you endless trouble, he said. His words sounded like a threat, yet he was actually begging for his life. The female knight in golden armor said proudly, "The Thundercloud Palace? The Thundercloud King is only a first heaven celestial king. In our rock palace, he wouldn't even be able to rank within the top 100. If it weren't for the fact that the rock palace was constantly fighting against their mortal enemies, they would have had over 1,000 celestial kings at their peak. Of course, they only had 2 ninth heaven celestial kings, and one of them had already died. Moreover, their grand elder had also been injured by the great Tao. Right now, they could only wait for Hunyo to rise and fill this gap. Otherwise, once their grand elder passed away, even the powerful rock palace could collapse overnight. However, even though their current situation was dire, a mere first heaven celestial king wanted to threaten a sect like the rock palace? What a joke! Meanwhile, Sun Jun was completely dumbfounded. Not only him, but everyone else who heard the female knight's words also had the same thought. Are you fucking kidding me? Everyone knew that celestial kings were the strongest in the world, but it was precisely because of this that the number of celestial kings was pitifully small, and any one of them was an invincible overlord. From the Zai clan to the Thundercloud Palace, countless years had passed, but which clan had a holy son or successor who had become a celestial king? Not one. From this, one could see how difficult it was to become an immortal king. You have over 100 immortal kings in your clan. Aren't you boasting a little too much? You dare to humiliate my king? You are destined to die a horrible death. Sun Jun coldly spoke. He could die, but the Thundercloud Immortal King couldn't be humiliated. This was the pillar of support for everyone in the Thundercloud Hall. It's just a fact, the female knight in golden armor said calmly. She lashed out with her whip again, and it was as if a mountain was collapsing and a tidal wave was crashing down. Layer after layer of laws lit up in an orderly manner. Sun Jun fled. However, even though he could unleash extreme speed with his thunder element regulations, he was still struck repeatedly. Although his vital points weren't hit, he was still riddled with wounds. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. With a long roar, endless light surged from his body, making him seem like a sun. This was the secret palace glowing. It was using this method to increase his combat strength, elevating him to the extreme for this battle. He was going all out. He had no choice but to go all out. The female knight in golden armor didn't seem to care at all. She casually lashed out with her whip. Even though she was incredibly calm, it was like a cat toying with a mouse. Sun Jun didn't have the slightest bit of temper. The difference in their strength was far too great. They weren't even on the same level. In the end, Sun Jun's secret palace was completely depleted, and his battle prowess was greatly reduced. He was whipped to death by the female knight. Another secret realm elite had fallen. Everyone was trembling, and no one dared to make a sound. Ziwan, hand over your mount, the female knight in golden armor said to Ling Han without even turning her head. Yes, milady. A female knight in silver armor immediately dismounted from her dragonhawk and rode with another person. Let's go, the female knight in golden armor said to Ling Han. She still believed that Ling Han wasn't worthy of her young imperial empress. In fact, no one was worthy of her young imperial empress. Ling Han chuckled and leaped onto the dragonhawk with the empress. The back of this immortal beast was extremely large, and one could even place a table on it. Let's go, the female knight in golden armor shouted, and 10 dragonhawks took off at the same time. They instantly became a small black dot. The dragonhawks were extremely fast, and they were also extremely stable. There wasn't even the slightest bit of turbulence. Ling Han held the Empress in his arms, and he allowed the gales to blow against him. With his current strength, he naturally didn't need to worry about them. The female knight in golden armor was slightly indignant. Her young imperial empress talked about this bastard every day, yet he actually dared to hug another woman right in front of her. How beautiful! Even she had to admit that the empress was as beautiful as a celestial maiden. She wasn't inferior to her young imperial empress in the slightest. This bastard! How is he so lucky? These dragonhawks were only at the severing mundane tier, but they were definitely very useful for long-distance travel. They had flown over thousands of mountains and rivers in just 3 days. At this speed, they would probably be able to reach the seaside in half a year's time. The celestial realm was far too vast. The Empress quickly entered into the Black Tower. She was already at the peak stage of the 3rd severance, and she hoped to advance to the 4th severance as soon as possible. Then, she would advance to become a true monarch tier. 5th severance. If she couldn't advance to the 5th severance, she wouldn't be able to contend against the descendants of forces at, or above the 7th heaven celestial king tier. As such, Ling Han could only wait outside. If he entered into the Black Tower again, who knew where he would be blown to? Thus, it was best to stay put. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. During this period, everything had been calm and peaceful. Nothing had happened. The female knight in golden armor was also cold and indifferent toward Ling Han. She wasn't willing to say anything, but she still told Ling Han that her surname was Guan, and he could call her Commander Guan. As for what her name was, she didn't say, and Ling Han didn't ask either. On this day, the weather was calm and sunny. In different parts of the celestial realm, elites would use their great power to create suns and moons, forcefully dividing day and night. Here, there was a bright red sun hanging in the sky. Generally speaking, only ascending origin tier elites could do this. Ling Han stared at the red sun. There was a powerful regulations of fire within the sun, and this caused his divine fetus of fire to become slightly restless. He really wanted to extract the regulations from the sun and transform them into his own comprehension. Of course, this was only a thought. To say nothing of whether he could withstand the fury of an ascending origin tier elite. Even if they allowed him to refine the sun, he still couldn't extract the regulations of this sun with his current cultivation level. The gap between their cultivation levels was far too great. Even if he was a divine fetus of fire, he would only be instantly incinerated. This sun was incomparably large, and it was comparable to a city. Moreover, just how large was a city in the celestial realm? Suddenly, a dark cloud surged over from the distance. It was like a massive tsunami. In the blink of an eye, the sun was engulfed by the dark cloud. The scorching light only flickered for a moment before immediately disappearing. After another instant, a massive explosion occurred in the dark cloud, and a red-hot wave surged over from within the dark cloud. This sun had been destroyed. Chapter 1852. Lord Commander, we've been searching for more than half a year, haven't we? A female knight in silver asked hesitantly. Ever since they'd been separated from Ling Han, they'd been searching for his whereabouts. They'd long since come to the conclusion that Ling Han was definitely done for under such a ferocious attack. However, how much did Hunyo care about Ling Han? They naturally couldn't give up without even looking. Thus, they'd been painstakingly searching these days. However, they all knew in their hearts that Ling Han was definitely dead. It was just that none of them brought this up first. Commander Guan was silent for a moment. She took out some materials and constructed a small formation. Then she took out a pitch-black stone. There was a pained expression on her face as she gritted her teeth and placed it in the formation. Instantly, the formation lit up like a mirror. Then a figure appeared. She was incomparably beautiful, yet filled with spirituality. The moment she appeared, she immediately jumped over. Did you find Nio's Ling Han? Seeing Hunyo's excited expression, Commander Guan couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. She paused for a moment before saying, "Young Imperial Empress, I've indeed found Ling Han." "Where's Ling Han? Where's Ling Han?" Hunyo looked left and right. She didn't have the demeanor of a ninth heaven celestial king tier heiress at all. It was all this man's fault. Thankfully, this guy was dead. Although the young Imperial Empress would feel sad for a while, it would eventually pass. "Young Imperial Empress, we encountered a battle between two elites on the way back and were affected. Ling Han and Ling Han were unfortunately killed," Commander Guan said through gritted teeth. Hunyo was stunned at first. Then she flew into a rage and stomped her foot. "Nonsense! How could Nyo's Ling Han die? Hurry up and find Ling Han for Nyo. Otherwise, I'll throw you to feed the big black bear." Commander Guan's forehead was covered with sweat. This person was already dead, so how could they find him? Hunyo, however, firmly believed it. She knew of the existence of the Black Tower, and after she became truly sensible, she even went to investigate the origins of the Black Tower and guessed some clues. She definitely did not believe that Ling Han would die so easily. In any case, Ling Han isn't dead. Go and find him for Nyo. If you don't find him, don't come back, she said angrily. Then she changed her mind. No, Nyo wants to find him personally. I'll leave it to you guys. Nyo won't be at ease. And that lousy expert wait for Nyo. Nyo will beat you up. Young Palace Master, you can't. It wasn't just Commander Guan. Even the female knights were trying to dissuade her. The young Hall Master's trip was too important. What if his enemies found out and killed him midway? Don't worry, young Palace Master. We will definitely find Ling Han. Commander Guan half knelt on the ground and vowed solemnly. Even if Ling Han really died, she was prepared to wander outside for hundreds of thousands of years. No matter what, she had to wait until the young Palace Master's cultivation was successful before she left. However, Hunyo shook her head angrily and said, No, you people are too troublesome. Nyo wants to find him personally." Commander Guan and the others all began to wipe away their sweat. In terms of troublesome, it seemed like this young Palace Master ranked first. However, although their cultivation levels were higher, the hierarchy of the Rock Palace was strict. The title of Young Palace Master didn't mean that she was the successor. Rather, it was because Hunyo's cultivation level was still a bit weak at present that she had the title of Young Palace Master. She would definitely become the Palace Master in the future, so she had no choice. Did they dare to say that to Hunyo? The Grand Elder probably wouldn't allow the young Palace Master to act recklessly, right? They all thought this in their minds, and didn't try to persuade her any further. I'll go and find him again. Since the young Palace Master has already said so, I'll just treat this as a last resort. Ling Han walked slowly. The Empress was currently in seclusion, in order to advance to the fourth severance. Even with the help of the reincarnation tree, this would probably take an incredibly long time. It was impossible for her to come out in a short period of time. How can I find Commander Guan and the others? The probability of him coincidentally finding a single person in such a vast celestial realm was close to zero. Thus, he had to make himself more conspicuous and create some commotion. In this way, Commander Guan and the others should be able to hear the news and come over. However, the prerequisite was that they believed that he was still alive. Then I'll first go to the nearest city. If Commander Guan's intelligence isn't wrong, she should also be able to figure out that the probability of encountering him in the wilderness is far too small. If I go to a city, I can still ask for information. However, this place had already been razed to the ground, and he couldn't find anyone to ask where the nearest city was. He could only randomly choose a direction to walk in. This walk went on for 7 days. He was still walking in forests and grasslands, and there was no sign of a city in sight. His nose twitched slightly, and he smelled an alluring fragrance. As a foodie, and more so as an alchemy prodigy, he could confirm that this was the hind leg of a 3-stone deer. At least 13 spices had been added, and 3 of them were extremely high-grade medicinal ingredients. Involuntarily, he followed the fragrance. Ling Han walked out of a small forest and saw a flat ground in front of him. There was a man sitting on a rock, and there was a bonfire in front of him. On top of the bonfire, there was a piece of barbecued meat that emitted an alluring fragrance. When the man heard the commotion, he turned around. His figure was tall and slender, and even though he was sitting, he was still taller than ordinary people by half a head. His features were extremely handsome, and he had a calm and steady aura about him. In terms of age, he was at most in his early 20s. Naturally, in the celestial realm, age didn't have much meaning. However, this man's life force was incomparably vigorous, and his age couldn't be too old. It was just that he clearly didn't expect Ling Han to appear here, and a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. "My dear friend, can you share some food with me?" Ling Han shamelessly asked. To a foodie, being friendly with others was a necessary skill. The young man was startled at first, but then a smile appeared on his face. He casually waved his hand and said, "Please." He sent out a signal without anyone noticing. Ling Han saw this, but he didn't pay any attention to him. He sat down and took out a small knife. He cut off a piece of barbecued meat and began to eat it in large bites. After that he praised, "Delicious." The young man smiled faintly and took out a jug of wine. That smile was filled with deep meaning. Ling Han received it and drank it in large gulps. After eating some more barbecued meat, he felt all the pores on his body open up. "Young master." In that instant, 7 people ran over from different directions and half knelt in greeting to the young man. But when it came to Ling Han, they couldn't help but reveal expressions of shock. The young man's surname was Liu, and his name was Liu Xianming. He looked at Ling Han, and his expression gradually became cold. He said, "Sir, there's no need to act anymore. Where's Qinxi? Did you kill him or knock him unconscious?" He had rested here for a while, and his 8 subordinates had spread out, each responsible for guarding a direction. But now that Ling Han had appeared, and Qinxi, who was responsible for guarding that direction, hadn't returned, it was easy to imagine what had happened. Ling Han was astonished, and then he deeply reflected on himself. He must have been carrying a halo of trouble. He was only smelling the aroma and eating the meat. Was there a need to torment him so much? Fuck. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.